Yo, people. We've changed the set around. What? Luminize. What? Not sponsored, which I was. Anyway, how are you all doing? I am slowly dying of, I don't know if it's a throat infection or what, but I feel like I have razors in my throat. So I thought, why not come onto the internet and do a podcast? Great idea. So I think I found a way to source ants and ant colonies. Ants Canada is a channel I follow, and he's full of ant knowledge. Lives in the Philippines. I'm not sure why it's ants Canada, but hey, I'm not a judger. I think Gary, I could be wrong. Never spoke to the man, but I think he lived in Canada and then moved to the Philippines. But I could be wrong. Hello, Repti Chat. If you guys haven't seen, go over and check over the. Are you calling it the 12 Pots of Christmas, Ben? I'm sorry, I forget. Anyway, if you want custom backgrounds in the UK, check out Bay's backgrounds. I've got some custom vivs from him I need to set up myself. We need to get some of those shade dwellers in there. Hello, Fee. Thank you for stopping in. Wow, Paul's Mono's in chat. How lucky. Hello, Hazardous. How you doing, my friend? Hello, Rick. Horny toads. Fun fact. They are not toads and they're not horny. Well, Gary, we'll fact check that for you later. It is a way to make an entrance. You can always trust on Gary. Gang, right. Gil and I are good. Ben's now got some Gil and I from yours truly. Hello, Rick. Hello, Mike. How do you know they're not horny, Gary? Yeah, Gary. Come on now. Hello, Dan. How you doing, my friend? Hope everything is well. Hello, Touch. How you doing, my friend? Right, I'm skipping over everything. Hello, Serenity. How we doing? Oh, have I clicked that? I didn't click that. Hello, Serenity. How we doing? Hello, Oz Herps. How you doing? Hello, Repti Room. BH is here for a good time. And it is snowy. You're right, BH. It's Paul. Hello. It is Paul. Paul is slowly dying. Anyway, let's get out of the housekeeping and let's get into this podcast. So, shout out to the Bug Factory. If you guys want to get some live food, use Pulse-Monitors-5 at checkout on your first order of live food. They are the cheapest that I've personally found in the UK. Plus, to be honest, I've not really had any issues with like death on arrivals or any bits and bobs like that. As well as if you are looking to sustainably grow some mealworms in 100% recycled pods, then check them out. They're pretty cool. I don't always use mine. The toad-headed agamas do like the mealworm beetles, so I should probably get back into it. But I haven't, but I will. So there's that. Promo at its finest. I know. Anyway, lastly, thank you to you guys over on Patreon that want to support me that little bit more. For I think it's £2 for it's £2 a month. All tiers are exactly the same. We don't we don't discriminate over there. You get entrance to the private Discord where you get to see some secret stuff go down. So if you do want to support me that little bit more and become part of the community, please feel free to check out the Patreon. Obviously, you don't have to. A like and a comment is always appreciated. But if you want that little bit more, then please consider checking out the Patreon. Right. Let me get back to these last few comments. Right, you're all talking amongst yourselves. That's fine. Okay. So, in this week's podcast, we have a very special guest. We are no longer doing just monitors. This is the second not just monitor. But it's my pleasure to introduce, I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, but Benjamin, bear with me, correct me if I'm wrong, Dragantha. Dragantha's Dragons.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
How are you doing, my friend? You all right?
It's a little bit cold, but yeah, doing all right.
Are you cold where you are? Is it snow on the ground? I know a few people in Europe are at this point in time, or are you just frosty?
It's frosty. It depends. About 1 or 2 degrees Celsius right here. A little bit of frost, a little bit of snow, but it's more or less more rainy.
Yeah, you're pretty much sounds exactly the same as us at the minute then. So similar. Yeah. Do you get hot summers or not too bad?
Yeah. We are the house or our place where we live is near the French border, So we get it's way in the south of Germany, so we
Oh,
get
okay.
really hot summers. So
Yeah.
around 35 degrees Celsius. It's nice and warm.
Okay. Do you get many? To be honest, I don't necessarily know the whole
Mm.
herp fauna in Europe, but do you get any decent herps like where you are, or?
Yeah, we have a couple of snakes. We have a viper species
Okay.
here, mostly amphibians. We have a lot of lizards, lacerta,
Hmm.
normal fence lizards, couple of toads,
Yeah.
but
Nice.
nothing special, I would
Yeah.
say.
Do you have I think they're more Italy, Spain. But
Yeah,
do you have jeweled Lacerta, or are they not as far?
no, we
No.
have the smaller ones. We
Yeah,
have
we have
the
Lacerta.
Murata species,
Yeah, we have
I guess.
sand lizards. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We only have one Lacertid species, and we've got the Viporius lizard over here as well,
Mm,
and
yeah.
then Agilis, the slow worm.
Yeah, we have
Y-
them too.
Yeah.
We have the railroad company built a habitat around my corner. I have it
Mm.
on my Instagram, so they are always in parts of the brick wall where I live. So in the summer, I shoot them with my camera, of course,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
along.
I was with you. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. I didn't do as much herping as I wanted to this year.
yeah.
We only have six species of reptile in the UK.
Mhm.
And I've ticked off 5 of the 6. So I need to pull my finger out and find that last one. So, but yeah, we'll jump straight into the quickfire questions, and it's
All
very
right.
much just either yes or no, or A or B, or you'll see. So, starting off with snakes or lizards,
Lizards.
money or time,
Time.
mentally strong or physically strong,
Mentally strong.
wild caught good, wild caught bad.
Good in moderation. I would say if you give people that know their stuff a permit to get specimens out of the habitat so they can reproduce them and maybe have a distribution to other keepers that are also able and know their stuff. I think it's good since you can learn more in captivity than in the habitat
Mm-hmm. I
in
agree.
certain areas.
Yeah, I agree, especially with some
Mhm.
species.
Yeah,
Now this could be a curveball one, but arid species or tropical species.
arid.
Okay. If you said tropical, I was in my mind. But yeah, arid.
Always arid.
This question is my fiance. She picks 2 completely random animals,
Okay.
and for you today, she has picked either. Do you prefer armadillos or
Mhm.
hippopotamus?
Armadillos.
Big reptiles or small
Mhm.
reptiles? Not necessarily in captivity. Just
Mhm.
do you prefer, as a general, the bigger or the smaller?
The smaller.
Um, Onto the monitors. Do you prefer the bigger monitors or the dwarf monitors?
The dwarf.
Would you rather be Instagram famous or
Mhm.
YouTube famous?
I had a YouTube part, so Instagram.
The video you did on the whole Luminize,
Yeah.
there was a movie, mate. It was,
Always like that. I had that with my art, with my model making. I was building models for competitions and had a YouTube channel running. So
yeah,
you see it in my room. This was a year ago, a full-fledged film studio.
Jesus, yeah. No, that the Arcadia video that
Yeah.
you did, I watched it yesterday. Whenever I commented, it was either yesterday or the day
Mhm.
before.
Yeah,
I
yesterday.
literally, I was watching it. I was like, "Fuck me." Yeah,
I was telling my wife I have to make a new video since Arcadia Germany, they sponsored a portion of the new lamps for me, so to test,
yeah.
and asked me if I can make a video on it. Said to my wife, I have to film a short video.
You
Yeah,
did a good
that's a
job.
short video, a whole day.
Well, your short video blew my 30-minute videos out of the window. So I don't have the props with me today, but
Mhm.
referring to the shoes, are you pro Crocs or no Crocs?
No Crocs.
Ugh.
I
think we've
don't
had.
like the sound.
You
My
know, like the
wife likes
sound.
them. The
Oh, okay.
sound. I'm a very sensitive to a certain sound, so
Oh,
the
okay.
rubber is
Yeah,
but my wife loves them.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean. I can relate to that. I do love Crocs, and we went to look at a wedding venue today, myself and
Mhm.
Fee, and on the way home we were discussing what to wear, and she was like, "Look, you can wear whatever you want. You're just not wearing your luminous green camo Crocs." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Um, do you prefer your animals, your
Mhm.
pets, to be feisty or tame?
Feisty. I keep
I
them
would,
a little bit on the wild side.
yeah. Let's elaborate on that one a little bit, because that
Mhm,
question does always intrigue me. For you personally, in your personal keeping, why do you
mhm.
prefer them to be feisty?
Um, if they are feisty, they are more observant. You see more of the natural behavior.
Hmm.
They are already in a safe environment, so you can watch them more in their safe but natural behavior.
Hmm.
Right now, all of my animals are in brumation, so they're in a wine cooler. I transfer them to colder rooms. I have a crawl space on that wall. So when they're about to cool down a little bit, they jump at me and bite me. That's abnormous for a horned lizard. I see
Yeah,
that behavior only with gravid females or emails that protect the clutches they just buried.
that's pretty interesting.
Mm,
That is, yeah. We'll get more into the whole Luminize stuff in a second, but
mm,
yesterday I watched my toad-headed agama enclosure pretty much dim down, so it was
mhm,
pretty much at like 10%. It was pretty dim. Halogen was still on.
mhm,
Um, and obviously this was the first, second or third night they've had Luminize, and you
mhm,
could see them being like, because they're so curious little lizards, and they were like more so than the Varanids. They were looking around, they were looking at the lights, and you could see that they were really like, well, what is going on? And
mhm.
that kind of sparked that, oh, this is like wild. And these animals, obviously, because they're so accustomed to not wild, now we're changing it. So that for me got some cogs turning as well.
Have you tried knocking on the enclosure under them? I had them in 2007. I
Okay.
bred a group of the Presswodsky or
Yeah, that's what I've got. Yeah.
yeah the
Yeah.
I spotted when I knock on the floor. They have a sensory system. If they are buried, they stick their heads
Okay.
out.
That's very,
That's
I haven't
so
done that.
funny.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. Yeah, I can
Yeah.
do. I can. I have a raise up Aki. That's a baby Aki enclosure
Mhm,
below them. So yeah, that's yeah. I've saw some cool behavior, because I'm not 100% certain on my sex ratios, because it should be a 1.2, but they're still
mhm,
juveniles coming into adults.
mhm,
So they're like sub-adult at this stage, and the male, I believe to be male, was like patting his like whole body like this and wagging his
mhm,
tail at the one I believe to be the older female.
mhm,
She had no interest. And he was circling her and wagging his tail and patting, and I'm like, okay. And then obviously he tried to mount her, tapered, bit the neck, which obviously in a garments is,
mhm,
they do that. But she did not. I'm assuming she did not want anything to do with him, so they just started death rolling, and then they split, and then he kept doing it in background, and I'm like,
mhm,
hopefully she's just not ready, and it's not a male. But there was no aggression from her. There was no displaying back, so I'm assuming it's a pair. But the bulges haven't popped enough on them for me to determine.
mhm,
One has a clearly thicker tail base than the other, the
mhm,
male. Um, so yeah, I'm still, because they're new to me. I've only had them since September, so
mhm,
I'm still trying to figure them out. But they are, and when you walk into the room, and they'll pop their heads up onto the glass like that, like onto the runners,
mhm.
and they'll look around, and they'll look down and watch you. Yeah. Anyway, enough of toadheads. We'll get back into them in a sec. But this question, in in reptiles as a general, do you prefer wild types or morphs?
Wild types.
Yeah, 100%.
For horned lizards, why do you
Yeah.
need morphs? Why?
Yeah, I think the same with the varanids.
Yeah,
Not that
that's
there's
why.
many,
Why do
but
you need morphs on that? Okay, black dragon is a hypermelanistic. Yeah,
yeah.
I can see the appeal, but it's not a weakness for them since they can cover a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I don't see any particular reason for morphs. You have to
No,
incest them.
I find with morphs, and it's my opinion, I'm entitled to it, but I find as soon as you start getting into morphs, all of a sudden an animal's now money and is no longer an
Yeah,
animal. It's just
exactly.
a pound sign or a euro sign or a dollar sign or whatever the case may be. It's you add yourself to a pyramid system and it's like, oh, what can we make next rather than how can we keep this?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm not. Don't get me wrong. There are some morphs out there of
Mm.
all species that I'm. There was a picture on Instagram someone sent me of like a super melanistic crested gecko, and it was a jet black crest. That's really
Whoa.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
really cool. Looked sexy as hell, but that thing's probably going to be like $10,000 or whatever it is, and it's a crested gecko. So I'm like, no, but looked amazing. But the whole concept behind it, for me
Yeah.
personally, I'm not a massive fan.
Same here.
The last question, in your opinion, the question is what's the best pet monitor, but I'll change it to what's the best pet reptile in your opinion?
The horned lizard.
There you go.
Any type of species, I don't care. It's always horned lizards.
And we'll get into why in just a second.
Mhm.
My missing species, I've never found the smooth snake. I found all native reptiles, amphibians. I found every single native amphibian, and I found all native reptiles bar the smooth snake. For those, I'm just
That's
going
a
to say
legless lizard.
no,
Or no. Yeah.
I don't know
know
it's
what you
Latin.
mean.
I'll find it though, because
Um,
you guys have them. They're more common.
yeah,
Well,
we
Europe
have
has
them, and we also have legless lizards. I have anyway. I have a video on one crossing the road around here.
Corenelia. I can't say it. Corenelia austriaca. I don't know.
Yeah, I heard that, but I
Yeah,
have to look.
That
Yeah,
one there.
I remember that,
Yeah.
but
So
it's
that
more on the northern part of Germany.
yeah, they are really they're only found in like 4 different pockets of the UK.
Yeah.
2 of which are on my doorstep, and I've
Mm.
still never found them. I have 3 or 4 locations where they are found within 30 minutes of my house, and I've still never found one, which is sad.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometime.
One day, I have to admittedly, I didn't go out much this year. No excuses, just didn't. So it's only myself to. I didn't find many reptiles this year. I found probably 3. But yeah. Anyway, so yourself, how long have you been keeping reptiles for?
The first horned lizards I got when I was 10, 11. Before that, I was heavily into fish keeping. I got my first fish tank when I was 6, and
Yeah.
the next year I was breeding South American dwarf cichlids, apistogramma, those kakadu apistogrammas, kakadu cichlids, and then eventually I had to sell them because I had way too many, and was going to a fish and reptile show. And that's when I first saw an article on a paper, on a magazine, a horned lizard. And then it was there.
Day one.
So, yeah, I already knew I can get them we have reptile shows here, and they were heavily imported. And the first thing I got, you can't keep them. They need antacid, but you can feed them crickets. You just go to the pharmacy and get your antacid. And I was like, no. Was setting up a fish tank at that time. We were cutting holes for ventilation. So I already knew all the part from amphibians a little bit and my fish keeping. And then I was straight go out in the garden, grab ants. 6 months later, I had eggs.
Okay. Yeah.
It's easy as that. But reptile keeping in the 90s and early 2000s was everything had to be sterile.
Yeah.
You needed to be sterile, and anything from outside is bad. And I think everyone who wants to keep a reptile should keep a fish tank first. Then that's where you learn something like patience. You learn to. Besides, I had fresh and saltwater fish tanks. It's all
Yeah.
the same. You need to learn. You set up the tank. You wait for the ecosystem to build up. You need to wait for everything to establish. Bacterial growth, beneficial bacteria, filter medium, stuff like that, and then you add. When everything's right, then you add your animal.
It's a very good point, actually. You know, I've never thought about that because I had a goldfish as a kid, and when I was a bit older, I had a snakehead and I've had some piranha, but I've never done fish keeping. But I have a really, really good friend who's really into fish keeping. And it's so right because the amount of people that buy a reptile and then go, okay, now I need a setup, and all of a sudden you're putting this animal into an enclosure that you don't even know its like parameters. And sometimes the amount of times I don't go on Facebook because it's the devil's work, but the amount of times you see on Facebook just brought X animal, how do I care for it? And in the fish world, you just can't do that.
Yeah,
because it'll die. Yeah, that is an interesting point because, of course, I'm aware of how impatient the reptile hobby is, but reptile keeping doesn't teach you patience. That is a very, very good point.
And for most reptile and fish keepers, I was the first barrier. For 9 years, I was working for one of the biggest pet stores in Germany and was responsible for the whole aquatic and herpetoculture section. So I was the first barrier.
Yeah.
And that was a good thing, but also a bad thing because a lot of pressure. And for example, both enclosures for my adults, I have a little bit more here and there, those are empty. I installed the Luminize to test, but those are empty. And during brumation, I switch out my tanks and switch out the substrate and stuff like that, and then I start to measure and test. And first, when everything is right, then the animals come in.
Yeah, I try to do that more nowadays, like with a bit more experience under my belt. But I've been guilty in the past of, no point in lying, seeing something in a shop or not for me personally, but some people would see it at a show. Well, to be honest, my toad-headed agamas were an impulse buy. I'm not gonna lie. We went to a reptile show, my first ever reptile show. I've never been to one. I went to in September. I've always loved toad-headed agamas. I've read up on them and I've done a bit of research, but not to the level that I should have. My friend was kind of whizzing round, and he came over to me and he's like, "That enclosure there with the jungle dawn over the top." He was like, "You have to go now." And I was like, "Why?" And then we went round there, and four of us to life, me and three friends, were looking over these small toad-headed agamas, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And they're like, "Have you got a setup?" I was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "You got UVB?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, because I have an extensive collection. So I have empty Vivs and UVBs and HANA. So I had everything." But I was like, and then I did buy them, and I was like, "Oh, what am I going to do?" And again, ADHD. So every single article I could find, every single video I could find was watched in like 20 minutes. So I'm like, scouring the internet. And then I was like, okay. And I'll be honest, I lost one of them. The male of the pair passed away very quickly after getting them. I don't know if that was me. I don't know if that was stress. Like, it passed away within 2 days of me getting them. So I doubt it was my husbandry, but again, I don't know. So I sort of sat and I was like, oh, this was a mistake, and beat myself up about it. And my female that was left over, she did not move at all. Didn't move. She just laid in the sand. And then I'm reading about how communal they are and how important it is. So I scoured the internet and I found a pair, and I brought the pair. And normally you would quarantine and bits and bobs like that, but I was like, I've got nothing to lose, and I put the 2 in with the female, and they instantaneously, the female, she jumped up, her tail was wagging, she was running around again, and I was like, okay, I rushed into these. I'm glad that I did, because they're definitely a keystone species for me now, but it taught me more so, because I like to take lessons from everything in life. Patience. I should have waited.
Yeah.
I should have gone, do you know what? They're really, really cool, but now let me find a pair from a shop, get it set up ready, put a deposit down. I don't regret what I did, but I did take that lesson from it, that impulsivity cost me in the long run and cost an animal potentially. So yeah, I do agree with that. And like I said off air, I do class myself as an experienced keeper, but stuff still happens. So
Yeah.
I think that's a very important point to bring up, because I do 100% agree with that.
You see that a lot with the new bioactive wave that's coming in. But almost everyone does it wrong. If you want to truly set up a bioactive tank, you do it actually a year in advance.
And leave
Since it's not different than setting up a saltwater tank. You need constantly buying the clean crew and put them in and water that, and you have the drainage system. You have to build it from every layer the nature has. And what are they doing there? I'm sorry. They put in springtails and isopods and call it bioactive.
Yeah.
That's,
one pophos in the middle. And it's bioactive.
The most of them die off in the first week.
Yeah.
Since the substrate hasn't established. And the plants will die off first, then grow stronger back. That's the same with a fish tank. First you lost all the plants, most of them, and then they grow back. Since the most of the plants are grown outside, so they are a little bit more resistant for transport, and they lose their overwater leaves, and then the underwater leaves grow back. So before you get a reptile, get a fish tank.
Yeah, no.
If you're completely new,
there's patience, learning patience.
Yeah.
I find as well, like Dan here, he's a friend of mine. He's saying he's trying to practice that. He got into reptile keeping. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan. A bit older, rather than starting as a kid or a teenager. I think he had the odd bit now and then, but he's got back into reptile keeping. Let's say that now, later in life, and because he's got a maturity level to him, because he's older, he's gone, okay, I'm not going to rush into this. I'm going to make sure I've got this. I'm going to get the setup. But then I think I started keeping reptiles properly at 17. I'm 29 now, so it's been 12 years properly. But because I started with impulsivity, that is now ingrained in me, and it's a subconscious trait of just being like, oh, we can get this, oh, we can get that. And when you don't start on the right foot, it's really hard to put the new boots on and take that next step forward into not rushing into a new species. And I think the bioactivity as well. The amount of times people set up a plant and some branches and throw in a cleanup crew, throw in the springtails, and then literally the same day put the reptile in, and then they're like, bioactive.
That's.
I don't get me wrong. I have live plants and cleanup crew in every one of my setups. I don't have a single bioactive, and I don't claim to. I just have naturalistic keeping. But yeah, I do find that funny. But then there's people like me to blame for that, because you get social media influencers that are like bioactivity setup, and then you just follow suit and you take their word for gospel. So yeah, I agree with that. I always find that funny.
One of the funny things is most of the bioactive YouTubers, they build backgrounds with quickcrete and the pigments, and the pigments are so highly toxic against plants, they simply die off on that background. And since you spray them heavily down, the whole stuff gets into the substrate, and it's toxic. So
Yeah.
what's with the dry lock stuff? For 30 years, we use flex mortar, concrete with simple hardware store paint, acrylic paint. It works.
Yeah, at the minute, mine consist of either just cork panels or just
Mhm.
bits of wood that I've screwed
Yeah.
on. That I don't do anything fancy. I just, yeah, there's that, and
Yeah.
they can utilize the sides. Good enough. That's all I
Yeah,
do.
and the main reason is that reptiles can grasp the concept of glass. They can
Yeah.
grasp it. So you need to block the sides off. That's the whole reason. Yes, of course, you can make them accessible for the reptiles, but I ripped my whole enclosures out this summer. I couldn't stand it anymore, since if they are new to the background and they are quite small, they run up, they fall down. And for a species that is mostly arid and on plain surface, mostly plain surface, doesn't necessary. You can create microclimates with the substrate and decorations alone.
Yeah, I'm finding more and more the importance of substrate. You know, a lot of people assume, yeah, throw in some eco earth or some cocoa fiber, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, and of course it works, but when you start getting into like keeping and you really start to learn about dirt and earth rather than just, well, let's put it this way, you're learning about soil rather than just dirt.
Yeah.
And you realize the importance of it and the difference it can make between having a sodden enclosure, having a humid enclosure, having that drier layer on the top just to trap in humidity, having the different root systems, worms, bits and bobs like that that will turn it, churn it, and create oxygen spread through and allowing minerals to drain through down, having the leaf litter barrier, watching it compress, having to top it back up. I'm nowhere near an expert. I'm not going to claim to be, but you start going past just a layer of eco earth and you're like, oh my God, this is a whole different, like, and then you start to go into sand. And I'm recently just going into the sand world and you're like, play sand. And then you start going and you're like, oh, shit, I need to do better.
Yeah.
Then you start going, yeah. So teach me about, because obviously I'm keeping Stenodactylus now. I'm looking to get into some scorpion geckos. I am obviously keeping the toad-headed agamas, and I know that play sand, for example, is shite. So what for a newbie like me? Where's the first sort of point of call when I'm looking to build from the foundation up?
You have to, what I did back in the day to understand soil a little bit is I watched Gold Rush on Discovery. Of course, the North American side stories they had. So I could, and also Gold Rush in Australia, I could study the soil. I was reading geology papers from oil testing, so which level they had. And then I started to build up based on the needs my animals have. I knew most of desert reptiles can, to a certain point, absorb water through their skin. The first layer I did was a fine gravel, and then I put a hose, a silicone hose. I corked it off on the end and put holes in it so I can put water in it from above. The first layer after that was a mix of play sand, organic topsoil, and clay a little bit. To a certain degree, I mixed it 1-1-1. And then the last 5 centimeters, I was going a little bit more heavy on the clay. Right now, I'm using the Exoterra product since it's way easier.
Yeah.
And the last layer, I was putting on chips of wood I put in. I was going into the Dremel, a little bit gravel, a little bit of more clay and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Since my animals, and that was I guess I studied 5 years the patterns on every locality I could find on the internet and books of the paintings on the back of my animal, so I can dial in their camouflage. And on top of that, I sorted out the gravel and find stones so they could really blend in. But when it's too hot, they hide, they can bury, and the deeper they bury, the more humid it gets. So I could build up a more vertical environment like in nature.
Yeah.
All sun is burning from above, but they can go under it. I run some tests with the metal halides. I run some tests with slate. So I put the metal halide since I suspected the infrared is not good enough on them. And Serena Wunderlich from she's a physician. She does a lot of testing for reptile lamps. Yeah, like that. And the slate was touching hot on the on the top and ambient on the underlaying side. So that was the first concept where I started to make enclosures like that. And you see the I guess I can show you. Can I show you? Yeah, on the Instagram I have the mix of the underlaying soil. That's the top, and if you scroll down, I have somewhere here in the box.
This one?
That's my hibernation box, but that's exactly besides the top. I would do it, but I would also mix a little bit more of the topsoil in. I have like a cacti drainage substrate under it, clay sand with topsoil mixed, and a little bit of clay, and on top of that finer sand and gravel.
Yeah,
And they blend in.
Yeah, your enclosures are. Oh, there you go. There's one. Your enclosures are stunning. Yeah. Like if you took out the flower pot dish, like let me zoom in. Well, here you go. You would just sort of assume that was taken sort of in the wild.
Yeah, and that's my whole point. I want to make an environment for my animals that when I point my camera on, you can distinguish it from the wild.
Yeah.
And it goes from the light, from the soil to the plants. I source plants from their native habitat. I raise them up. And the understanding of the animal is the first that has to come. And then you can sort out of breeding. Breeding is, of course, I want to reproduce them, but I want to make it for myself and trade them with other keepers so I can establish a stable population. That's a hatchling from last year. She's also hibernating right now.
You hibernate the hatchling as well? You don't raise them up to adulthood? You straight into...
No. If you don't hibernate them at an early age, you miss out on fertility, egg production, bone growth. Hibernation is not just a state of dormancy. It's they get fertile with it. They reinforce their bones. A lot of biochemical processes happen during the brumation. They get bigger out than I got them in. There is a lot of reinforcement. The whole growth period they have in the summer, that's when they establish it. And that's the most critical point, I would say, after light and ants.
Yeah, I've had... Let's have it this bit. I've had conflicting information as regards to brumation with the toad-haired agamas, because they experience a cool in the wild. They go down for brumation. I've had some people tell me to brumate them from day dot. I've had some people to tell me brumate them when they're adults, because this will be my first winter with mine. So it's, do I brumate them? Do I not? And I've had so many conflicting people tell me different things. But I'm on a similar mindset of you that well, in the wild, babies don't go, I'm going to stay up through winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see that in a lot of the bearded dragon groups. If they're young, don't brumate them unless you want to breed.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Just put them in a wine cooler. After a right preparation, of course.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
speak on that. Do you believe brumation is crucial to all species that brumate?
Yeah, of course. They evolved like that. So there is a function in that period they rest. It's
Yeah.
not just because the weather is changing. It's more of a cycle. If you want to breed horned lizards, you have to decide that a year before,
Yeah.
from day one. During the brumation, they build up the follicle, the egg production, sperm. That's all built up during the brumation.
Yeah. Oh, I've had this with Gil and I. Gil and I don't have a true brumation, but they get cold and they'll have a few days to a week or so of dormancy, and then in the wild it will be a slightly warmer day. They'll come out, they'll bath. They're not necessarily eating, but they're still day active, just very much reduced so. But they do experience shorter, colder, especially at night. And people are like, "Oh no, don't." I gave mine a winter, January, February last year, inadvertently, purely because of how cold my room was. March, April, start coming into spring. I'm like, let's give them a bit of a wet season, like they would have in the wild. They have a little bit of a monsoony season. Boom, eggs everywhere. And
yeah,
I'm experienced enough to know, okay, that cool period was enough to increase spermatogenesis for the males. It was enough to enable the females that trigger for the follicle growth that they needed, spurred on by the natural monsoon and food season, because when the rain comes, so do the bugs. And like we were speaking about in a minute, the pressure, and it all twigged in my head. And I was like, oh, this is why I'm having. And then I spoke to other keepers. They're like, oh, do you winter them? No. Do you get them humid, like dry, but humid? No. Oh, no. Well, then the thing dots start to add up. So when let's talk a little bit on the sort of brumation thing, even though we're not started at the start, but we're on it. What month and what do you do to start preparing for brumation?
First, I look at the weather data, and then I match it to ours a little bit. I can control barometric pressure since we get the roof fixed, so pressure changes. But anyway, in September, early October, I start to reduce the lights by first 2-3 hours, and then I stop giving food right off the bat. That's why I don't like for species in North America bioactive stuff, since they need around 3 weeks to empty their digestive system completely. Then I reduce temperature lights periodically to about 4 hours. I also leave the windows open overnight so they feel it's getting colder. Then I build the boxes beforehand, dry sand, gravel, so they have a drainage layer. I put them in. Some people spray them during brumation. No, don't do it.
Yeah, cold and wet. Bad idea.
Yeah, they get fungal infection. That's why I put in a drainage layer. So excess water from the cooling of the wine cooler gets sucked up by that. After that, they start to bury themselves in. I spray a little bit and make sure for another week no animal has get feces in it. So I have to make sure the stomach is empty, since if anything is left and they cool down, metabolism doesn't work, it rot, they die. I put them out of the enclosures into the boxes and let them stay in the corner right here or in the crawl space for another week. and then I put them when the weather outside is about 12, 14 degrees. I put them in a wine cooler, and then I start from the outside temperature I have them to cool down to around, depending on the species, 8 to 10 degrees Celsius. And they stay like that till February, March.
Okay,
It
long time
depends.
then.
Yeah, it depends.
So 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, but in preparation for that, I marked anywhere around me, I marked ant nests. I put small containers with ants that are easy to source. I have some ant farms here
Yeah.
on the top, and the boxes on the left, the brown boxes, are all full with bean beetles. Since they're high on fiber, we cover the diet later, and also ants. So if anything happens and I see, okay, one animal doesn't go well, I can wake him up slowly, of course, and then feed ants.
What
But
are you looking for? How would you know that an animal isn't doing well through brumation? What would you look for? Movement and stuff.
for horned lizards, you see it on the eyes.
Okay.
If they sink in a little bit, and the root of the tail, and also the thighs. When they sink in a little bit,
yeah,
you,
yeah,
you
okay.
see, okay, they're losing weight,
Yeah.
and eventually they stay up a little bit more. If the outside weather is warm, they run around in the boxes. So you know, okay, maybe they reposition itself, bury themselves a little bit more, or something is wrong. So I look every day, every morning, every evening, since I have to open the cooler for fresh air.
Yeah.
Look at them if anything's okay, and if they run in the box, I look, okay, look they good. Sometimes I weigh them just to make sure, and if they are buried the next day, everything is good. But brumation for me in horned lizards is always painstaking, since
Yeah.
I didn't hatch most of them this year since I restarted. And I also don't know what the animals were kept.
Yeah.
The parent animals.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got a message from one keeper. It was a one-time mystery clutch he had. No, he texted me like how my animals are doing, and his won't go to sleep since it's not cold enough, and he could do better, let's say so. But he's 30 years older than me.
Yeah.
He knows better.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's always like that. But yeah, first come my animals, and everything I can control, I control. Every start of brumation, I empty out every enclosure, since ants will nest everywhere.
Yeah.
And bioactivity, to a certain point, bioactivity for me is not a fully bioactive cycle, so I don't have to clean my enclosures. Why? You always
Yeah.
have to clean your enclosures.
Yeah.
It's a capped off space. So I water my plants, and the drainage gets wet, so the animals can experience the same cooling effect they have in the wild. But I have to make sure no food is in the enclosure.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you just before you brumate them, I assume you weigh them before you
Yeah.
brumate them, and then that way, obviously, you have something to relate back to. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then, let's just continue with the life cycle. So you come out of brumation. We're now going into spring in a freshly decorated, elaborated enclosure. So let's just speak on the enclosure because that's kind of following suit. How are you preparing the enclosure? So we've gone through the soil. Outside of the soil, as regards to if there's anything in particular you put in the enclosure for them to maybe hide or interact with, and then the lighting and the light cycle, how's spring looking in the enclosure wise?
The first 2 weeks, I keep them fairly cold. But most important is the microclimate. Since they come out of brumation, first thing, they are not fully active. They need to hide like a hatchling.
Yes.
So I offer them dry grasses and also a lot of cork. It's not particularly naturalistic, but cork is
It works.
absolutely
Yeah.
awesome. A lot of
Yeah.
hide spaces. I mist them a little bit more frequently, since after brumation they have a high need of water and rehydration, and I keep females and males separate. Absolutely crucial, since in the wild males are up first, since they build up strength for mating and for their avances. Let's say it like that. But if I keep them too early together, they might stress each other, and you have a completely stressed out female that won't give you any eggs.
Yeah, and the male
So
will be a
about
male and pester her.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then after about 3-4 weeks, I put him together. That's where mating season starts for lighting.
Yeah.
Fairly easy. They need a lot of light.
Yes.
Anything you can fit in high-powered LEDs, you put in. But
Yes.
a real game changer for me was metal halide. Not in particular the one that produce UV, since
Just
they
color
burn off.
spectrum.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a color spectrum. I use one from Austria, which has really nice coverage of UVA. And I use the Philips Master Color, not the Elite one, since there is a little bit greenish. The normal one, CMD with color temperature is 4200 Kelvin, so a little bit cold white.
Yeah.
They produce a little bit of infrared, but I filled it up with an incandescent bulb, not a halogen, since my enclosures are mostly 4x2x2. So a halogen will heat the enclosure under them.
Too much. Yeah. Yeah.
LEDs, and I have a sunny side and a shade side. But I try to overlap the base lighting. Is it T5 or LED to about the middle of the enclosure, so they have a little bit more of a gradient. It's a bad word, but light gradient. You need to make sure they can cool down.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly like that. I put out the LEDs now, since I I put in the luminized stuff.
Yeah.
But it will look like that. So on the left, it's for testing purposes. I put in the metal halide, the LED. Then there is a T5. I use 12%.
Yeah.
On higher enclosures, I use 14%. The old Jungle Dawn LED bar, and on the left is the incandescent. So they mix in together. And on the shadier side, a normal shop light will do. Sometimes I have brushes and grasses over there, so they get a little bit more light. And it's not a completely cut off from light to shade.
Yeah, you can see obviously bottom left, you've got this
Yeah.
big illuminated area, and then you can see instantly, even on, because obviously normally when you take a picture, you can never really see, but you can see how bright the left is.
It's around 50K lux.
Jesus,
I have
okay,
50 to 60.
Nice, yeah, really bright.
They needed this bright. They have the third eye on the back. They need the high count on light.
Yeah, you can see there. You have the really, really bright. Are they Sanzia, the lights, the LEDs? Yeah.
On the Platyrrhinos, the northern desert horned lizard, I have the 24 watt. I have them a little bit cooler, since they are from the north, far from the north. The Texas horned lizards, since they are in Arizona and Texas, they have the 36 watts in it, and the more incandescent, more power incandescent lamp.
I'll be able to go back now. Jesus Christ! I need to get the little oh, there you go. I need to get the Sanzia. I have a few in my room, but I need to get them for the toad heads. Yeah, I really like your setups. They're really nice.
And that's when That's the pictures I took for the magazine, and I looked at the pictures. Okay, it's good, but I remade the enclosure entirely. It's always like that.
Yeah. Do you find that
But yeah.
they just quickly on this because I'm there? Do you find that
Mhm.
they buff a lot?
If they are young, they need a little bit more humidity.
Okay.
So if they are until they are sub-adult, I offer water dishes. But
Mhm.
then it's okay. Then I spray down, and they are not so protective anymore. They know me, and I can give them water with a little pipette,
Yeah.
a little bit of dropper. Yeah, that's one of my hatchlings from the
Stunning.
Texas horned lizard. Yeah,
Stunning
in
little
shed
creatures.
that's so they puff up a little bit more. He was angry. He was
Little
very angry at
aliens.
me.
Very
Yeah.
cool. And how often? So we're in spring. You've put them together.
Mhm. Mhm.
What kind of are you doing? Just 1.1? Have you got multiple males in the same enclosure with multiple females when it's breeding season, or how
Mhm.
do your ratios work?
Breeding season is from April to June, and sometimes a little bit later in the year to
Yeah.
July, September. I, if I can, right now I can't, since I don't have enough animals. I put 2 or 3 males with
Hmm.
the same count of females, since it's a little bit more. They are not as aggressive against each other, but it will make sure there is a little bit of more competition.
Yeah.
It helps, since
Yeah. Yeah.
females get more attracted to the stronger male, and you can also switch females out, since you need to make sure the bloodlines are okay. But you can keep them together. It's no problem at all.
And then there was a question there somewhere.
Mhm.
Completely slipped my brain. It'll come back to me.
Spring mating, spring
Spring
season.
mating. Yeah. Oh yes, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And clutches. Do you get
Yeah.
1 clutch, 2 clutches, 3 clutches?
Once earlier, one earlier in the earlier, and maybe a double clutch in the
Okay.
later. But most likely it's one clutch, depending on the species, between 4 and 36 eggs.
Oh Jesus Christ. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see that a lot. Where there are more predators, the clutches are bigger.
Makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in your experience, if
Mhm.
it what's kind of the hatch rate? Are they high hatch rate and then maybe like a higher death rate because weaker babies because more eggs, or
Mhm.
are they all normally pretty good?
It depends. My hatch rate is almost 100%,
Okay.
since I dialed it in.
Yeah.
The first 2 clutches, I lost an egg or so. But it also depends on the temperature you're incubating. If you are
Yeah.
incubating them too hot, the embryos will develop too fast, and you have problems. So most horned lizards will hatch for the egg-laying species between 42 and 66 days. I try to aim more on a 60-day. So I adjust the temperature a little bit cooler. Ratio of male and female is completely random,
Okay.
but most likely it's equal. But
So
if you give
sex
them a little bit,
determined as
yeah,
soon as the sperm hits the egg kind of thing, like Varana.
yeah,
They're not temperature dependent.
no,
Yeah.
it's in many other species. I tried it, I tested it, of course, since I tested it at that time. The electric blue geckos came
Hmm.
out, and we made private studies with egg incubating. So if we incubate them at a low temperature, we get 100% females. So I tried it with the horn lizards, but it's completely random, but most likely equal.
What kind of temperature are you roughly incubating at?
Between 26 and 27 degrees, depending on the
Okay.
species. You can incubate them at around 30, but I wouldn't advise that. It
No.
it will fail.
And as regards to incubation method,
Mhm.
are you using perlite, vermiculite, suspension?
I made my own mix. Vermiculite, more the more bigger stuff, the bigger
Yeah.
ratio.
Yeah, granules. Yeah.
And I mix in a little bit of activated carbon
Okay.
to account for the fungal growth. For incubation, you can use the hatch boxes, but I would ensure that you have a good ventilation. Most incubation you make in almost completely closed space, but I had very good success with cricket containers, and I angled the lid a little bit, halfway full with vermiculite and an active carbon, and then put that in a water-based incubator. The old style fish heater water
Yeah.
tank, I use them.
Okay. Yeah. We'll get back onto diet. We've gone through obviously the brumation coming into spring. Autumn will be the wind down on to the babies hatch. Once the baby is hatched, is there anything in particular that you do to get them kind of habituated or started, or do they go straight into similar setups to the adults? Do they even go in with the adults?
I have to think a little bit. Okay, so the hatchling hatch out of the burrows. It's a high humidity. They just absorb the yolk, and the first instinct is everyone wants to eat me.
Yep.
So they hide themselves into brushes, grasses. So the humidity there is still very high. So I put them in an enclosure. The first thing I do before I put them in the enclosure is I spray it down. And then let it sit for a minute so the humidity can rise up and it's not too cold.
Yep.
And I put it full of grasses, brushes, so they have a wide variety of microclimate, so they can adjust a little bit. And I also don't feed them the first day, since if I introduce ants right from the start,
Gotta start feeding
they
on the lizards.
they might experience stress. So that's the first thing I do for almost all species, and it works. Since if you put them out of the incubator where a high humidity is, and put them under the harsh sunlight per se, they dry out, and the skin of them is made to absorb all water, but it goes also in the other direction. That's why I also don't use deep heat projectors. It will cook them from the inside. They are no made for that.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you'd imagine as even desert species stick them straight out until you just, that is how you would just picture it. And these microclimates are always overlooked. But yeah, I do the same with my Ackies. Completely different situation, but anything I can relate it to. But some people are like, yeah, like stick them. My Ackies have a 65. My baby Ackies have a 65-degree basking spot if they choose to use it. But they also have 3 or 4 different cork flats with moss underneath and humid soil, so they can completely escape the sun. I've never had the amount of people that will say to you, you buy an Ackie, it's lost toes or claws. You're like, oh yeah, it's humidity, it's shit. I've hatched hundreds and hundreds of Ackies. I've never lost one toe, ever. And it is just because I give them that option to be able to have that microclimate, and it's something so simple that a lot of people just don't think of. And when you think of the ecology of the animal, like they need deep soil because they burrow it. But why? When you think about it, why do they burrow? They burrow to escape the heat and find the humidity. So if you can enable them humidity, you're achieving the same thing in a smaller box. And like you say, that's why it starts about coming and understanding the animal and what the animal's expecting. Okay, so the babies are out and they've been out for a few days and bits and bobs. So I've had a eureka moment in this podcast, and I'll explain in a second. Well, I've diet ants. So obviously, in my head right now, before this podcast, before us speaking, before just me looking at horned lizards. Oh, they eat ants, but you can supplement with like the folic acid and bits and bobs. Just listening now, I've gone, well, they brumate, so do ants. So spring through to summer, we have ants, and the horned lizards are awake. Spring through to summer, genius. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
it's so simple.
yeah, ants. Now,
Mhm.
is it as simple as? We'll get into the proper details of the diet in a second, but is it as simple as going out? Because obviously you've just said you have a few cultures and colonies behind you, but is it as simple as going out and collecting ants and you can feed them to your animals, or is it not that simple?
It's that simple.
Yeah.
You can see them a little bit. Yeah.
Let me
You
see
can
if I
see
can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see them.
Yeah.
They breed in those containers. I collect them from outside.
Yeah, I've done a few before, collected
Yeah.
queens and created colonies. I've done that
Yeah.
myself. Yeah.
I try to understand every nuance of my animals, and it's so fascinating. I read all year long. Anything I can find. I found out the biggest fear was, okay, I introduce any sickness, illness, virus from outside to my animals in the 90s, 2000s.
Yeah.
But if you look into ants, they keep their burrows insanely clean. You can't find anything. Why would you just put it in your enclosure? And ants are cheap, free. And we come in a bit why ants are so important. And it's not the acid. It's absolutely not the acid.
Yeah, once we spoke in private message, that blew my mind because as someone who's never kept horned lizards and someone who's looked into them a little bit, the first thing you always hear is, just folic acid. The only concern I would have, and obviously I have the answer to the question already, but just as to bring it up because it's come into my brain, so I'm sure it's going to come into others. Ants are a pest animal, so people try to poison ants. I'm assuming you're just collecting from the woods, places where humans aren't bothering the ants. I'm assuming it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I'm collecting from outside, but you have to make sure the areas are not polluted. We live in a very high agriculture section of Germany, and my parents-in-law make a lot in grapes. So, of course, they have their regulations for food industry to spray them down against any infection and whatsoever. But we also have a couple of sections of wood where no one is coming in. And I know also places where we can speak with the neighbors. What are you spraying, or something like that, or on the edge of playgrounds? Okay, you can find dog stuff and that like that, but you can always find, or even in our own garden, there's nothing. I mow the lawn. I know what's there. Those are from outside around the house.
Yeah.
You have to make sure what's in your ground. Of course, ants can adapt to a toxin or a pesticide like anything does, but it can also harm your animal, as well as you can get an infection from crickets you buy from an unhealthy food source.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, you have to make sure.
And then, again, probably a very simple question, but I'm going to ask it. Does it matter what species of ant you feed? Is there a bad species to feed? Any ant?
Yeah, there are banned species, the forest ants, and some species are banned in Europe. You can't feed them. But if you have the black garden ant or the yellow meadow ant, plenty. For hatchlings, I use the yellow ones since they are more underground. They feed on roots and plant material, so they are a little bit calmer and don't stress the animals out. For anything else, I use what I can find on on the black garden ants, and I breed the European harvester ant, and also started a colony with the native Pogonomyrmex barbatus, the red harvester ant, but they are really slow growing.
And then I'm just going to add it here because I've seen it on your Instagram.
Yeah, those are bean beetles.
Bean beetles.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming they're not for every species because of the conversations we've had, but some species these can be added in because of the fiber, yeah?
Yeah, because of the fiber, and they are really good for giving them supplements. Those beetles don't clean themselves like a locust would or a cricket. So you can powder them, and they have a similar behavior to ants. So it's basically the same. For a one-time food a week, I give them that or isopods or locusts. But we had a conversation. I don't feed them crickets. I don't feed them roaches.
No.
We come to it in a bit. But those are in a high count, like keepers which don't read or educate themselves on the lizards would feed crickets and mealworms and roaches. So the animals will die. It may vary from animal to animal how long, but at least in brumation they die, since the kidneys and the liver is full of fat and they can't digest it properly.
I'm assuming as well, because of what the diet is and the climate they're from, I'm assuming they have an incredibly high metabolism.
Yeah.
So they eat a lot.
They need to eat a lot.
Yeah.
In relation to the body mass. Yeah. Speak.
I was just
sorry.
Oh no, I was just about to say.
Okay.
I'm assuming you don't count the number of ants they eat, but I was going to ask.
I stopped.
Yeah.
I stopped years ago.
Yeah, I can imagine that would have drive you insane. But
yeah.
I just was going to obviously let you continue, but I was going to just ask how much and what kind of, how do you gauge how much to feed, I guess is the question.
It's a little bit of you can't measure it exactly. They eat what they eat. You need to dial it in a little bit. You can see it if they are too puffed up and they stop net. Eventually they will stop to eat, but you can't count that since the animals are programmed to eat anything they can find in those harsh conditions. It's purely instinct.
Yeah.
But
no, go on.
Yeah. But
do you find that they hunt? They actually actively hunt. Yeah.
Yeah. Besides ants, if you feed them a locust or an isopod, they will hunt and they will show a different pattern of behavior. And the interaction of them with other prey is so fascinating. One of my Texas horned lizard males, he jumps at isopods. Since he learned they bury themselves if he goes too slow, like he would on a locust or other beetle or stuff like that. He knows, okay, if I go too slow on this kind of prey, it will bury himself, so he jumps. It's
like
the only animal that does it. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little hop.
That's pretty cool.
Next year I try to film it. It's hilarious. But if I feed locusts on my desert horned lizards, they wiggle with the tail and they go really slow, and you see the relation to a chameleon with them. They also have a sticky tongue, and they can also vary their color a little bit.
So they are adapt
to
eating different prey. Yeah. So you can see it. They have it in them. It's like an innate behavior.
They have it.
They know. Yeah.
But of course, in the wild, if they can, they only eat ants, since nothing else they are not really able to catch a locust in the wild. It's in our enclosures. It can't escape.
Yeah.
So, and most of the time, if I'm impatient, I put in my tweezers. Get it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. So let's get a bit into nuance then, because
Mhm.
where I guess let's start with this folic acid myth.
Mhm.
Where, if you know the answer to the question, but
Mhm.
where did that whole rumor come from?
When they started keeping horned lizards, and they learned a lot from the Phony Devil, since it's convergent evolution. They
Yeah.
built almost the same way. The first instinct they had, okay, those red harvester ants are a little bit toxic, so maybe they need the poison,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the whole myth. But it's not a formic acid. It's also not another thing. The other myth besides that is they need the formic acid to lower the pH in the digestion system, in the stomach, to counteract any parasites. Yes, it can help. It's the same if we put in a little bit too sour of food. We have to counteract with alkali and stuff like that. It can help, but it's also not the point. And okay, why formic acid? Let's look at the ant. The ant consumes plant material, and it will form formic acids, mostly for defensive purposes, and also it's a byproduct of their storage of humidity, stuff like that. It's all stored in the abdomen. In nature, horned lizards have the ability to do a biochemical reaction called catalytic hydrolysis in English. So they can break down the formic acid into salt and water. So they can have another access to water.
Yeah,
Why would they need that in captivity?
it's true.
Yeah, why?
Because they have the misting.
First
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, they have a misting, they can bury themselves, I can put them a water bowl. They don't need that function. First myth, debunked. Second myth, it can help with parasitic. Yeah, it can. But it will also a proper diet helps too. If you feed your animal what it needs, the body don't stresses. The immune system works. So it don't build up the parasites. Every animal has a parasite. Everyone. And
Yeah.
if you put them a dewormer in, since nematodes were a huge fact back in the day, you destroy the complete gut flora. It's the same with uromestics. If you
Yeah.
put a dewormer in, you can start from you. You have to feed them the feces of the parents to rebuild that gut flora.
Yeah.
So the second myth. So why ants? Of course, ants are available, even under harsh conditions. They adapted like that since when they first started appearing 300 million years ago. The temperatures were so high, only ants were there when they started to establish in a more primitive form. Also, ants have a high count on fiber. They have protein, but no carbohydrates. Nothing. And the most important part is they have a substance called albumin. Albuminoid is essential for transporting fatty acids and nutrients in the bloodstream. It can also help to gather toxic elements and throw it out. So that's first. It's albumin. It's also the ant has a high fiber count. It's always available. It has moisture, but they need to adapt it to the ant. So they gather the nutrition from the abdomen by breaking it down, and the complete excess of the ant gets thrown out since there is no benefit in digesting it more.
Mm.
Ants have a really thick chitin layer. It's an
Okay.
armor that's if you scale it up to another proportion, they will die. Simple of the mass. The problem with other feeder insects is they have also a chitin layer, but it's widespread and thin. So the horned lizards have to break it down, and for that they need a lot of energy. Horned lizards have a huge stomach. In relation to body mass, it's about 20% higher than other reptiles.
Jesus, yeah.
They are like most other reptiles ectothermic, so they rely on the energy from outside. But to counter that, they need to eat a lot of ants to gain the nutrition count and also the essential vitamins and amino acids. Ants have around 600 of them. The whole body of the horned lizard is adapted to ants. If you feed them a mealworm, they have to put themselves in to a state of lethargy.
Yeah, they have
If
to.
they're
Yeah,
lethargic, they need so much energy and moisture to digest a mealworm. It will kill them. And
yeah, if it's too much on the body.
yeah, and the triglycerine fats and the fatty acids they have, it's too much of a burden. It's a desert
Makes
dwelling
sense.
animal. The whole
Yeah.
body is adapted to gather moisture through the food, the essential elements of the ant, and then get out.
Yeah, I'm relating it a lot to when you see like people feeding like the Audatria, the dwarf monitors, mice and rats. The body was
Yeah.
never designed to
No.
digest that. They can do it, but like you say, it makes them lethargic. Their bodies aren't used to digesting that. They need more time on the basking spot. They need more time between food, but because their innate behavior is to feed, opportunistic, they're going to continue to eat and eat and eat, and people aren't keeping them correctly anyway. So the food sits, and then you end up with problems. And it's the same as when you see people feeding certain reptiles like skinks, cat food, and dog food. You know,
Tegu community.
Yeah, it's not evolved for that. I guess obviously the haulage is a lot more extreme of a situation, but we see it. We see this repetition of let's just call it laziness in amongst keepers by not following the diet. And on just kind of on that around this kind of topic, as regards to obviously ectotherms, we've gone through the lighting rig, but what do you do? Are you reading power density, or are you reading a rough basking temperature? How do you run for your basking spots?
It's based on a little bit of experience, and of course I have a solar meter, I have a lux meter. I don't have a power density meter.
No, not me neither. Yeah, I just wondered what you used.
I go based on what Thomas Griffiths and them on the lighting group and Facebook posting, since I consider them a very reliable source, and it's great work they do. So I follow that and I watch at my animal. I also put my hand under that, since I have over the years I gathered a pretty sensitive feeling about temperature and stuff. So yeah, I measure lux, I measure UV, of course, and I measure the overall temperature, since I think the radiation is a little bit more important than the basking spot temperature. It can vary depending on the substrate, and so I go with the general measurements of the basking lamps. And since you have to account for, I have also metal halide, so I can go a little bit lower on the incandescent bulb. So ratios is right. The radiation affects itself. But if you can, the best source to put in more light are LED spots and bars. Or if you have a high output T5, put it in.
Yeah, I found this with the toad heads. Because I've never utilized sand as a basking spot, so I've always had either cork or a rock or something underneath my halogen. And for the toad heads, I just have sand. They have wood and rocks in their enclosure, but the basking spot is on sand. And it's the first time I've ever done it. And sand gets really hot. Really hot. And obviously I knew that because you go to the beach on a hot day and you're burning your feet. Of course, we all know this. But that got my brain ticking, because they'll sit underneath it, and they'll flare their back toes up, and you're like, oh, it's too hot, but they'll sit. So what I've done is I've pretty much buried a piece of cork. So when they bask, they're basking on cork, but it's effectively still sand. and now they sit. The radiation is the same because it's exactly the same light. I haven't changed the light, just the underneath what the radiation is reflecting from, and obviously cork being what's the word I'm thinking of? Not an insulator, but basically absorbent of the heat. It will take away rather than the sand will reflect it better. Now they sit under it like this, and they're like, I'm like, just literally like, again, paying attention and watching your animals and sort of seeing how they react to it. Because I was like, maybe I'll change a different and go for a less lamp, but then I don't want a lesser lamp would reduce my radiation and my intensity. So I'm like, okay, I need to figure out something else with this. But yeah, what metal halide do you use? The non-Philips one?
Those are Reptiles Export. They are a company from Austria. They make them in a really good color spectrum, but if I get them, I burn off the UV. I use them for plants or something like that, but I burn off the UV since UV will double. So I can have a UVI of 14 with the T5 if the metal halide is burning also. So that's too much. I only want the visible light and the UVA and a little bit of infrared they have.
What kind of UVI do you aim for?
It depends. Between 5 and 8.
Okay. Yeah, high.
So
yeah.
right on the edge. With the new Luminize, I can vary. I start with 5 and go in the middle of the day. I go to 8, 9, and then I drop down. So it's they are focused in 4, so I have to account that.
Yeah, I'm doing this with the toad heads. I showed my friends yesterday. I put my solar meter under the because I have a 14% in with my toad heads. And obviously, as you dim the bulb, I'm like, I think there's a UVI of, I think it's around 9 in there. So I've got a UVI of 9, and I'm like, oh, let's just say I want a UVI of 7. Dim the bulb. There we go, UVI, and they're like, whoa, and I'm like, I know. And my plan is thinking spring, have a UVI of 5, and as we get into summer, have the UVI, and they'll increase it in increments. So then not only are they getting brighter, longer days, they're getting a more intense summer as well. So that's my whole thinking behind it, which I'm excited to play with.
I'm too looking forward to it since it's a whole new level. And the best feature for me is I don't have the clutter of digital timers and microcontrollers and stuff like that. I use
on your phone. Done.
Yeah. I study web and software development right now, so I know exactly how much work it is in those lamps. And alone, the money is worth, even if you don't dim the lamp, to have the timer synchronized with all the other lamps. I hope they bring out a E27 fixture with the same Bluetooth. You can link it in.
I've already spoken to John about. I don't know if he is or isn't. I can't. This is an exclusive, but I have spoken to John. I said that would be good to do.
Yeah. It was my immediate thought. Okay, what about a E27 fixture?
Yeah, because it's not even so much about dimming them, because if you dim a halogen, you're reducing the radiation and the color spectrum anyway. But it's like you say, it's just having that controllability just to turn them on and off, so you don't have to have individual timers for the halogens. It's all on app. So it's just a Bluetooth on and off. It doesn't have to be dimmable. I think like I said, I have spoke to him about that, and obviously I'm a nobody, so he doesn't have to listen to me. But I imagine a few other people have said the same thing. So hopefully that, I know they have big plans. I don't know what the plans are, but I do know that they have big plans for the brand Luminize itself and where it's going to go. So fingers crossed that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what we need, because I could have one then for the Sansa LED, and then the halogens. You go halogen on, LED bar, come on, UVB, come on, LED spot, come on, all via your phone would be pretty incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thinking on my end. It would be awesome. Of course, I have the metal halide, but I can synchronize that with a smart plug, so it's not a big deal. But I talked to my wife. She asked why the new lamps, and I she's also much more now into lizards, and she's an engineer. So naturally, she
Okay.
asks, "Why do you need that?"
Yeah.
It was a game changer.
Yeah.
Even to
Easy
sit on
sales
the app,
pitch.
whoop. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's witchcraft.
Yeah.
And of course, it did. Yeah,
No,
go
carry on.
ahead.
Sorry. No,
Okay.
you go. We're getting excited over Luminize now. This is it. It's gone out the window.
Luminize. Of course, the technique is quite old, but yeah, we had that for the aquarium hobby
Yeah. A
since,
lot of
I don't
fish
know,
keepers have said this.
2003.
Yeah.
Fluval made the first dimmable LED light, but most of the LED sockets and the diodes are not really tuned for reptiles.
Yeah.
So yeah, backlash here and there, but I'm so happy for the app and the controllability. I don't care if it's the same on their aquarium and an aquaristic line. I don't care.
No.
Since the technique and the ability to time them with patterns, it's so much better right now.
100%. I'm an electrician. That's what I do.
Yeah,
As a
cool.
day job. So like dimming a fluorescent tube, you can do it. You can get a dimming palette. You know, it's not like you say, it's not new technology, but to do what they've done, you would have to have some kind of background in engineering, electrics, electronics, that kind of, and then you are talking cables everywhere. You are talking either computer software and or manual doing it. You know, it's not going to be seamless. And then you're also talking maybe, obviously I don't know because I didn't try to do it, but consistency. It might not be as consistent, and then you have to have all your different spectrometers, lux readers, like meters, just to make sure that what you're doing is okay. You know, Arcadia have done all that for me. They've put 20 quid on top of the price of the old one, which is not a lot of money. And they've gone, yeah, there you go. It's all done for the sake of 20, 30 quid more. So it's like, okay, thank you. Great. Yeah. So I'm all for it.
Same on my end. That's friend of mine is also an electrician, and he tried to build an LED bar.
Yeah.
And he had huge problem. He used it for his fish tanks, but he had a huge problem with the heat. The excess heat of a diode. And you can say what you want. LEDs can produce a lot of heat.
Very hot. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that's another level. The passive cooling on the unit, it's great. It's so great.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, if we're continuing to like sing their praises, but now they're IP65 as well. A friend of mine yesterday pointed out that I've been testing it because I don't even realize I have them in my Prasinus enclosure. So I spray just, you can see the like the hard water droplets on the diffuser. And I'm like, I don't even realize I'm spraying it, but now you don't have to worry because obviously it is the water ingress is, you know, it's submersible. So spraying it is the least of your worries. So,
and for the frog people, it's even better since they can mount the fixtures now inside and don't have to block them with the thin mesh because they need the extra thin mesh for the Drosophila and the fruit flies and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you can if I was talking to my friend yesterday, and I was like, so let's just say I buy the 39 watt, let's just say, because UVB only really has to be as long as the lizard, and I keep a couple of bigger lizards, so we'll go with the 39 watt. So the 3 foot. Well, I've got the sodometer because I have a lot of UVB here, so I have them in my toad heads. Okay, so I've got a UVI of 10 for argument's sake. In a year's time, that goes down to a UVI of, let's say, 6. Let's say that 14% tube, just hypothetical numbers. Okay, that's no good for my toad heads anymore because I want to bump them up to like 9 or 8 or whatever the case is. But my Ackies would love UVI of 6. So, or let's just say 5, then I can use Luminize to dim down the tube to 5. Perfect. In a year's time, that's going to go down to, let's just say, 3. Oh, no good for my Ackies anymore, but my Prasinus, well, now they would love UVI of 3. So now I use this tubing with my Prasinus, and now after a year's time, that UVI is down to like 1.5. That's no good to my Prasinus anymore. But my geckos, now my geckos would love that. And all of a sudden, this, again, hypothetical, I don't know the numbers, but this tube has now lasted me 4 years instead of 12 months. And all I've had to do is buy one new tube to put into the toad heads, because the toad heads have gone in with the Ackies has now gone in with the Prasinus has now gone in with the geckos. And I'm not buying 4 tubes every year, I'm buying 1.
Yeah.
And when you think of it like that, and even if you buy a higher percentage tube, the 14%, you can, because the color spectrum doesn't change, it's just the UVI output, you can just adjust the UVI to suit your species, which is incredible.
That's a whole new level.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
It was pointed out maybe the phosphor coating will affect, but over time, since you have to burn in. But I put in my burned in tube, so for now I don't care.
Yeah.
And we will see in a year what it does.
Where we're at, yeah.
Yeah, but for now, even if you can use it for 2 years, it's a huge win.
Oh, 100%, yeah. And even if it only lasts the same amount of time, what it's achieved in the same amount of time, you're still, like I say, my animals, I've had Luminize on my Prasinus for coming 4 months now, and his colors have improved. His circadian rhythm is improved. And I'm not just saying this because I don't need to say this. They haven't said to me, right, Paul, you have to plug, none of this.
Same with me.
Yeah. So normally when it was just on and off, he would come on and he'd be pretty much out within 20 minutes. He'd be out basking. Now the halogen comes on, the lights come on half an hour later, the UVB the LED does, and then like half an hour after that, the UVB starts to come on. And he doesn't come out until the lights are on probably like 35%. You don't see him. And then he comes out when the lights are on 35, 40%, and he'll have a bask. And then he's so active as they ramp up to like 100%. He'll disappear for a couple of hours. And then as it comes more towards the end of midday, like an hour or so before they start to ramp down, he's out and he's super active until about an hour before they go off and it's dim. And then he goes and finds somewhere to sleep, and you can see a pattern. And he's understanding now, rather than just sort of being like, okay, and I'm raising a clutch of Gilleneye on Luminize from hatch to adult, just to sort of see how they compare to my adult group, just to see what happens. And I have a couple of other species that I'm going to be raising on it, from babies to adults, just to play around, because we don't know. Arcadia's done the testing, but now this is the whole keeper testing side of it, and we can all find the different sort of ins and outs of it. And I'm sure if there is critiques, they'll go back and they'll change it, and that's what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. And with every new product, there's a whole backlash. And it's the same if you get a human out of his pattern. He will be, oh my gosh, what do I do? It's all new. And they had to put out a video to introduce the app.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm a programmer. For me, it was easy to understand. The lamp was found. I put it on. The first thing popped up. Okay, I can test the tubes on full power. Okay, it works. Basic schedule was lined up, on, off, done.
Yeah, simple.
It's not many. There are no changes with a smart plug. It's basically the same.
Yeah. Just apply schedule, done.
Yep.
Simple as that. Yeah. Set
copy paste.
Yeah. Done. That's all I've done. I have 3 schedules. Basically arid UVB, arid LED, tropical UVB, tropical LED. Yeah, pretty much what I have. Yeah, because I give the arid stuff a longer midday, and I give the tropical stuff lesser midday. Because I was talking to an Australian keeper, and he's into his lighting and bits and bobs, and he was saying, well, you go outside in the morning, out in the wild, in the bush, and the power density at 7 o'clock in the morning is right, but the lux level is low. But the UVI is high because obviously it's Australia, so the sun is it's there. And then midday, the lizards run off because it's too harsh. So obviously, in the enclosure, you have to set up luminize to replicate that. You have to have the ramp up to be a lot faster to be able to achieve the UVI a lot sooner, because these animals, obviously in a box, it's different, but because he's in Australia, his room heats up as well. So the animals tend to disappear and skulk off. So he has to ramp it to have the UVI sooner and higher. Whereas us in the colder climate of Europe, it doesn't really matter. But in Australia, you've got to have a bit of, again, nuance and have a bit of change. But it's just about understanding it. And once you understand it, you can go, oh, well, yeah, well, I'll just, instead of having a 3-hour ramp up, I'll have an hour ramp up, and then you can achieve the UVI. So it was interesting because it's not something I'd thought of, because it's irrelevant to me, because my climate's cold, whereas his climate's hot. So it's all interesting conversation.
Yeah, and that's the same point with herpetoculture nowadays. Instead of looking what's the evolution of the reptile I'm getting, where does it come from, what's the climate, how does the climate change over the year, and then I look into the recommendations and care sheets. And that's most of the time are just how do I not kill my animal in the first week? That's a care sheet.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. That's why I've never done a care video on YouTube, because this is a hot topic. This is a very hot topic. So there's a difference between me telling you how to care for, let's say, a mangrove monitor, because that's probably my most knowledge on any of the species I keep is probably Indicus. So I could tell you how to not kill a mangrove monitor very, very easily. I also could tell you how to care for a mangrove monitor, because I've taken one through its life stage. Whereas, let's say toad-headed agamas, I could tell you how to not kill them. I can't tell you how to care for them. I've had them for 4 months.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how to care for a toad-headed agama. I can tell you how to not kill it. But if I made a care guide on a toad-headed agama, that would just be me regurgitating stuff I've read off the internet, because I have no personal experience with the species. And that's why I don't really like care guides, because it's just, for example, let's use me as the example. It's just my opinion on, well, it's my, what's the word I'm thinking of there? It's my phrasing of someone else's advice that I've read. That's all it is. I've heard you say, okay, let's just use the horn lizard. Okay, the horn lizard wants to be on a 45 to 50,000 lux on a basket spot, and I'm like, okay, cool. A horn lizard, I know that's all I'm doing. I haven't learned that myself. Whereas with Indicus, I have, because I've done it. I've put in the work, and even then, I don't want to put a care guide out. I can put out advice and little bits of knowledge, as it were. But yeah, you get these people that have had an animal for a month, and they're like, everything you need to know. I'm like, how do you know? Like, you've had it a week. But yeah.
And that's a problem with the most reptile YouTubers. I have 150 plus animals in my animal room.
Yeah.
Tell me exactly how you breed for 10 years that one animal over there in the corner. I don't know. I just got him last year on the Reptile Expo. It does this and that.
Yeah.
Well, nice. That's another thing with the articles. Of course, I made the first one will come out, and then I told, okay, I can't fit everything on it first. Let's split it a little bit, and I can get more into detail on that part and them, because you can't fit it. Even with the written word, you can't capture all the nuances. That's impossible. And
even this 2 hours, this is a scratch.
That's a basic advice you can give.
Yeah.
Even books. I have 3 or 4 books with bearded dragons. They almost match. They almost match in. It's right differently, but they match.
Yes,
And
same stuff,
all,
worded different.
on all 4 the same bad advice. And that's when you see on Facebook groups reptiles with plushed animals in their enclosures.
Yeah.
And you don't know on which factory out of Asia the plushie came from, and you have a fire hazard since it's plastic.
Yeah.
And why? Or cuddling with your animal in the bed. That's not enrichment. That's anthropomorphism.
Yeah.
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 And most of the people who do that, I assume they don't know enough about bacteria and infection and what you can give your animal rather than the animal gives you, because you have most likely a better immune system. And you put it out in a stressful situation. Oh, it closes its eyes. Yeah, because it's frightened. Yeah, I had that in the pet store for years.
I've had that with
Yeah,
monitors.
yeah.
They're like, "Oh, it loves being pet on the head. Its eyes are
Yeah.
closed." I'm like, it was
Uh-huh.
literally like accepting that it's going to die. That's what
Yeah.
it's doing right now. It's not. It's given up. It's processing. It's like, I cannot win this. There is no point in me wasting energy.
And that's the same point with the formic acid on crickets. Yeah, they need it. Okay, you put a highly acid substance on a cricket and put it in the mouth of a highly sensitive animal.
Yeah.
If you want to do that, drink citric acid first and tell me how you feel. And the advertising for this product is a species, a Mexican horned lizard species, who needs about 30%, 40% ants, since in Mexico the diet varies a lot. The climate is a little bit milder. We have a bit more variety of invertebrates. You have a rainy season. Yeah.
Yeah, it is hard. It's so hard because I talk about it a lot on this podcast, actually. Like, I call them echo chambers because obviously that is what they are, but that's just the way I phrase it. But every single person, myself included, are in echo chambers, and the echo chamber is only as good as the people that taught you. And some of us are very fortunate we have very good teachers, and others aren't very fortunate because they don't have very good teachers. The mission of keeping, in my opinion, is to enable everybody below you the opportunities to become above you. So everything I know, if I can pour it into people to help them up to become the rung above me, and then they can continue to help the people in their circles. And hopefully the people that I've decided to put into my circles will help me, because there's always people above you and there's always people below you. And the way I deem it is it's our job to help people up. But one, you can't help everybody. Two, some people don't want to be helped. And three, you have to be careful because sometimes you think you're helping, but what you're saying is wrong. And you might not even know it's wrong.
Yeah.
Because, like, for example, I'll be completely honest. This formic acid stuff, I told you off air. I was told that that's the done thing. I've never looked more into it. So thankfully, I've never told anybody that that's the case, because I've never been in a position that I can tell someone how to care for a horned lizard, because I've never owned a horned lizard. So I've never passed advice on to it. But if someone would have asked me, I'd probably, they need this, I was told they need this powder or this supplementation. And because I've never been in that echo chamber, I didn't know any different.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sender and receiver. That's the point where, okay, you told me that, and the first thought was a negative one. Cause that formic acid stuff again. But there is also a chance. You can like the conversation of us too. Okay, there is this base knowledge. Okay, how can I put him into the position where he where he gets the same thought as me. Okay, why the ants? Why the formic acid, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then there are people who put so much effort in avoiding the evolutionary perks of their animal. You can go out. Okay, it depends. You don't want to go out, but you have to go out to get the ants.
Yeah.
Natural conclusion: don't get a horned lizard.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yeah.
Same with monitors. Monitors are extremely intelligent, and I never got one. I never will getting one since they need a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And I'm almost in summer. I'm almost always outside gathering ants or materials, so I can't give my monitor enrichment
Yeah.
as far as it needs, so I don't get a monitor. I like them, I love them, but I don't get them.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Know your limits. Yeah, 100%. I have people all the time. They're like, how can I get around this? Or is there a better way? And I'm like, no, this is
Yeah.
literally what they
Yeah.
are. And the problem is, like you say, you can't be rude to people because only the animal suffers. If I get generally 50 messages or comments, 50 to 100 messages / comments like a week.
Yeah.
Some of which are just, oh, cool. But others are like, oh, how's this? Or what do I do with this? Or who? And I had one recently, and if they're watching, hello. But I had one recently. They had a Savannah monitor, a Bosque monitor, and they were trying to socialize it. And they had it in a big enclosure that was completely empty. No UVB, no LEDs, just a halogen. And they didn't offer it fresh water. They had no water in the enclosure. They only had water twice a day when they let it out because that's what they were told to do. Now, don't get me wrong. I can sit here and say that's fucking stupid. Like,
absolutely, that's
what the fuck?
Animal abuse. That's animal abuse.
But if I said to them, "You're a fucking idiot. How can you not give your lizard fresh fucking water, you dickhead?" They're gonna go, "Oh my god, oh," and the chances are that animal's never gonna benefit. So I explained how to socialize a varanid. I explained, they were like, I said, you need to add enrichment levels into the enclosure. You need to add the deep soil. You need to add LEDs. You need to add a UVB. You need to add water. And I explained why. And they were like, oh, but it becomes more aggressive when it has more stuff in the enclosure. I was like, it's not becoming aggressive. It's becoming defensive because it has something that it enjoys and it doesn't need you for that mental stimulus. So it has, it's becoming an animal again. And I was like, also, if you don't like that, buy a dog. Don't buy a Bosque monitor because they're not always puppies, and they're only puppies because they're severely underheated and severely obese. But I explained it all in a way which I believe to be digestible. And obviously, my teachings aren't going to be for everybody, but that is what it is. But if I went off on them, then it's only the animal that suffers. I don't benefit. They don't benefit. And the animal definitely doesn't benefit. So you can't be like, oh, no, you twat, you're wrong. And I just assume everybody knows nothing, even if they're geniuses. If they're coming to me for advice, I assume they know nothing, because in that way, no stone is not overturned. Because if I'm assuming you know how to set up a basking spot and you don't, and it doesn't come up, then that's on me. And I haven't done my due diligence as someone trying to educate. So I just say to people, look, I'm going to assume you know nothing, and we're going to go through the start to finish. And if people are willing to listen, then I'm willing to teach. And I also say, please do more research, because I am not an expert. I may have successfully kept and bred X species, but I am no means an expert. I'm still learning every single day. And it's so hard because, like, I don't really watch Star Wars, but I saw a clip on Facebook, and I think it's like the Diary of Boba Fett, and it's with like Baby Yoda or whatever. Anyway, and there's a scene where one of the whatever Boba Fett is, like Jedi people, it was like a kid, and it was like, oh, this one's a weakling or something like that. It's a Baby Yoda, and then Boba Fett was like, those who don't know don't speak. And I love that, because if you don't know, like this little kid didn't know that Baby Yoda was a fucking Jedi master. So he was like antagonizing him. So
Yeah.
they taught him the lesson. But those that don't know don't speak. And that's what stuck with me, because if someone messages me and says, "Hey, how do you care for a horn lizard?" One, now I can send them to the podcast. But before today, I would be like, I don't know. Because I don't, those that don't know don't speak. If I start spilling off this knowledge that I've potentially seen, how did we end up here? Honestly, P, you know me better than anybody. Fuck no. But like, if someone messaged me like, "Oh, how do you care for an Aldabra tortoise?" I don't fucking know. And my ego isn't big enough for me to go, "Oh, well, I think they need." I don't know. I'm really sorry. I don't know. And it's simple as that.
That's and the thing, I got messaged last week from a reptile breeder in somewhere in Europe, and he asked me for advice, and then I gave him. I sat there for an hour, asked what does he know, what he wants to know. He asked and asked and asked, and at the end he said, "Thank you, and you were the first who answers all my questions and not calling me stupid." And the other problem, I think, in herpetoculture is if you are young, you don't know. I had the same.
Years. Yeah, same. Yeah.
Since I was a kid, there is, of course, I had other reptiles since I had to know my stuff for my work. So I kept my other reptiles. I kept all sorts of reptiles at home, but I don't had them for a month. I had them for 2 years, 3 years. And I don't have a big enough ego to say, okay, even on horn lizards, on different species, I don't know, since I don't kept them. I can assume, since I can assume since I have one that's closely related. But most horned lizards you can keep since they are protected, highly protected. Other ones you can keep since under them I don't had anyone. Out of the 21 now, I had maybe 9. And even under them, I never bred all of them. Since most of them were wild caught, and if you have Mexican species and you get one from different areas where the rain seasons are slightly different, you can't breed them. Since the rhythms are off. But it's the responsibility of the people who are more into one reptile and dedicate their life for it. To get the knowledge out. And it doesn't matter if you are 12 or 30 or 100 years old. If you can give people advice so everyone can benefit and the people can breed the animals, and since they are protected, you still have access to them, do it. I love to put my knowledge out since it's also incomplete and I learn every day. With every new animal I get, I learn new things. But if I give others advice on the same animals and they have success, it benefits myself and my population since we can trade.
Yep.
It's the same.
Yeah. The hobby, I was gate kept, if you like, from the Varanid community. Told the story many times, so I'll keep it short. But no, you can't keep monitors. They're incredibly hard to keep. This, that.
Yeah.
Which isn't wrong. But now I'm regarded as the monitor man of the UK, which I don't like. I don't want to be the monitor man. But these same keepers, they now, not all of them, but some of them now come to me for advice. And I'm like, the power dynamic seems to have shifted, but I'm still the student. Like, it's a strange, I'm happy to help I had like a really, really big Varanid breeder message me on breeding Gillonite. He was like, I just can't figure them out. Can you help me out? I've seen that you've had loads of babies. I was like, I'm no expert. I've only had them for a season, but yeah, I'm happy to help you talk about what I've done, and going through stuff. And he's like, yeah, I'm not doing any of that. And I'm like, I don't know, but I'd imagine that's why you're not getting eggs. And that's what it's all about. It's not going, haha, like I'm getting more eggs than you. It's about, oh, this is what you're doing wrong. It's about the animals. It's not. I don't care. But I've said before, the social media for me could disappear tomorrow. I don't care. I don't do it for me. And the day I do it for me is the day that I delete it all. It's about the animals. It's about getting information out there. It's about trying to help one person at a time and enabling them better care of their captive. Like just one person at a time. That's what it's about.
Yeah, it's still a mystery to me how you can assume, even if you have a species for a long time, you know all of them. Even the most recent studies I get on horned lizards, what are they? Environmental changes, mitochondrial DNA analysis, so they can elevate a new subspecies to a species, so everyone gets a paper and a name on a horned lizard. But you have to make sure that the study you read is beneficial to your keeping, since most of the studies are what's in the wild. But how does it affect my keeping? And there is the point where you need to keep a species for a long time to fully ensure what I do is right. And it can go extremely wrong. You make one mistake. We had a power outage on a building we were living. So the refrigerator I brumated my animals in it had a malfunction. I lost a couple of animals because the temperature was too cold. So for the next time, I got a wine cooler, and it's on a thermostat. So you learn from them.
Yeah,
So
it's
a mystery.
There's always a teaching, and not everyone is willing to be a student. But there is always a teaching, and if you're willing to look, and you're willing to learn, and you're willing to have patience and stick with a project, or a species, or an idea until completion. It might be 6 months, it might be 6 years, it might be 60 years.
Yeah.
And sometimes you start something and you realize it's not for you. There's no shame in putting that down. But when you find something that sticks, if it really sets your heart on fire and it really sticks, just don't lose your passion with it. Like, remember why you got into it. Remember, like, the 7-year-old you seeing it for the first time. Like, for me, it's Prasinus. I saw Prasinus in a magazine at 7 years old, and I was like, I need this animal. I had to wait from 7, I had to wait 18 years. By 20, I got my first one at 25. But I haven't even tried to breed them yet, and I had the opportunity to buy an adult female, and I decided not to, and I brought a baby off a friend, and I've been raising her up slowly and figuring her out and learning her quirks, learning who she is. And hopefully when she has her first cycle, because I know her so well, I won't have to think on my feet. I can be like, oh, I know you. I know you're off. I know behavior's changed. And I do the simplest level of interaction and enrichment with her by just having a little test tube, and she fishes the food out, just simple, natural for Prasinus. So I post it on social. The amount of people that are like, oh my God.
I saw the clip.
Yeah. But like
that's how they put the food out, the bugs out of the tubes, of the tree trunks. Yeah.
They're evolved to do it. And for me, I think it's criminal not to have that in any tree monitor enclosure, because it's an innate behavior. Like, they just know how to do it out of the egg. It's not learned behavior. They've evolved to do so. But again, people don't. So that's why I post it. People are like, oh, let me try. And that's what it's all about. And for me, it's like easy to get clicks and likes and stuff, but it runs deeper than that, because if one person watches that video and goes, oh my God, I need to do this.
Yeah.
That's what it is about.
Yeah, the same reason I started to do social media again. After I got sick and stopped my model making, I was like, okay, I deleted my YouTube channel. Stop. Too much work. And then I realized, okay, maybe I can use social media to gain more attention on the species. I can gather more people. we can figure something out. Since they are protected, you can't get them in anymore. And there are still a lot of people who have certain animals. So if you can connect to them, I don't care who it is, just trade. And if you need help, ask.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
social media is very good for that.
I had a few people actually, like maybe seven people, 6-7 people messaged me after announcing you were coming on, like excited about it. They're like, oh yeah, he does like great stuff. He takes great care of his animals. Like, oh yeah, like one person was really singing your praise again. I don't know how he hasn't got a massive following. Like he's a great keeper and stuff. So it's working. You know, I don't often like. I was saying this to this person actually. The problem is good keepers. That let's just say that aren't successful on social media because success is deemed by numbers. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not deemed by true. It's bloody fucking what's the word? Materialistic is the eyes of success. Successful content creators aren't putting out good content, in my opinion. They're putting out stupid shit to get clicks and likes.
Exactly.
Good keepers who aren't successful on social media. This is what me and this person were talking about. And I was like, the problem is people don't give them the likes, the comments, the shares, myself included. I'm terrible at liking and commenting people's stuff because I'm so busy with my own life. It's not an excuse, but it's the truth. I don't really go on Instagram outside of posting and replying to people. I spend hours a day on Instagram, but it's always just replying to people. It's not, I don't ever get a chance just to have downtime. And again, it's not an excuse, but because I'm not commenting and sharing your stuff, I've got millions, well, hundreds of friends that are great keepers. I'm not commenting and sharing their stuff. So the whole algorithm doesn't boost it because we all know, good keeper, there's no need to comment and blah, blah, blah. But you need to in order to, So it's a vicious circle. But I don't know how to fix it because, like I say, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm great at commenting and replying. I'm not. I'm terrible. I'm terrible at commenting on people's stuff and liking people's stuff and sharing people's stuff. But that's why people's stuff doesn't fly because I see a lot of people and a lot of keepers, and I'm like, how on earth have I got more followers than them? Because their stuff's incredible. Like mine's shit compared to theirs. I just don't understand it. And then you look at the engagement, and they might only have 50 likes, which is cool, completely fine. But in the eyes of Instagram, that's rubbish. So it doesn't push it.
It doesn't push it.
Yeah, and it's not that it's rubbish. It's just in the eyes of Instagram because there's not really engagement. So yeah, I don't know how you fix it, but I don't even know how we got onto this tangent. But social media is great, but also I think a lot of people, one, take it for granted, two, don't respect content creators / people that are posting, because I hate the term content creator because I'm an electrician. I'm not a fucking social media person. But I have the amount of people that are like, hey, can you reply? I'm like, I'm at fucking work. Yeah, it's hard.
And that's the same. Okay, I know the game. So you don't reply for 2 days. It's fine.
Yeah.
You work all day. You have a lot of animals, and right now it's promotion for Luminize. So, and for me the same. I'm tomorrow morning. I'm at school. After that, I'm at work. Then I have to go here. We're renovating the house, so I have to do that. So for me, the only time I have on social media is in the train.
Yeah.
And then I reply to the most recent stuff. Then I like the posts that coming under my nose in that certain time. I share that, and anything else has to wait. And the same goes with making cinematic videos on YouTube. The 100 hours you put into that video, you could also spend with your animals.
Yeah, or
and it's about the animals.
Yeah.
Why don't you spend time with them instead? But of course, it's if you have a huge following on social media with stuff you know about, more people will know about. So it's a good and a bad side, yeah, of course.
I had the epiphany, like, I would love for this to be my job. Like we all would, like before I even started, I'm like, I would love to be a content creator so I can be with my animals all the time. Then you realize how much time goes into it, so you never get to see your animals, especially when you're doing it on top of a full-time job, because all of a sudden,
yeah.
And then I'm like, one, I'm putting all this time in to spend with my animals when I could just spend time with my animals. And two, my whole goal was to reach people and educate people with animals. And just because I'm not being paid for it, like, so all of a sudden I was putting the worth on the money, not the message. And I reach a lot of people on Instagram a month. I just don't get paid. I think I've made 2p from Instagram. And I get between 800,000 and 1.3 million accounts reached a month, roughly. And I've made 2p. It's like
that's the ratio is so off.
Yeah. But that's 1.2. Let's go in the middle, 1 million people. That's 1 million people a month that's seeing reptiles in what I like to believe a positive light. And just because I'm not getting paid for it, I'm still doing the mission statement. I am doing what I set out to do. I'm just not getting paid for it. So when I had that epiphany, when I realized it was a game and I can play it how I want to play it, is when it kind of took off for me. And I was like, oh, okay, this now makes sense. We're playing chess here. And it's kind of gone off. But again, that's the same, it comes back to the whole reptile keeping. It's about looking at it for what it is, not what you want it to be. You can't change it. It is what it is. It's evolved. It's designed to be that. So play to that, and you'll be successful.
Yeah, and sometimes it happens that you post your Persinas making enrichment work. It reaches 1.2 million people. Out of them, 5% have the same genus as in the video or related to that, and we have 50 animals with more enrichment.
Yeah.
So all work done. And
100%.
That's the same I try to do with the horned lizards, since there's so much false information. There is a YouTuber with, I don't know, 1 million subscribers, and he stated in his video about horned lizards, you can supplement the diet with this product.
Boo.
I commented under it, no response.
Mm.
And that's a problem. That those people, okay, is this your best pet reptile? I don't know. Make your research and then find out.
Yeah, it's hard because
Yeah.
It's the people that I was watching. Okay, I'm not interested in naming names, but the biggest reptile YouTuber.
Oh yeah.
Saying some stuff on Varanids, and I was like, "You're full of shit." Like,
Yeah.
you're full of shit.
Yeah.
But that goes out to millions of people.
And
sometimes it's not worth putting your energy into it, because you then take that resentment, anger, annoyance, and hold it, and then all of a sudden it becomes your burden, and you have to
first your animals, and then if anyone is willing to contact you and you have the chance to give them a good advice, you just do it. I don't care who it is. If you make the step to reach someone who you think is a better keeper than you, if I had a problem with Varanus, I would contact you or someone else, Tom Cockfield. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing, though.
Kenan Harkin.
Yeah.
If I'm keeping it outside, he knows the stuff, even in a different climate.
Yeah.
You can see it in the presentation of the animal. How are they reacting? If they go to the enclosure, make the lid off, and the animal is, just close the video. Stop it. That's not a healthy defense reaction. That's a trauma.
Yeah, so I don't really watch much reptile YouTube anymore.
Yeah.
One, I'm too busy, and two, I really struggle to find people that I like. And it is a shame, but I've even slowed down posting YouTube videos myself, because the problem is with YouTube, you put something out there and it might be to the best of your echo chamber at that time. In 6 months' time, it could be a load of shit. And if it's not in my forefront, I forget it exists, and that's just my brain. So that video will be there forever until someone does point it out to me and it becomes in my forefront, and I'm like, oh shit. So that kind of scares me. So that's why I'm sort of happy just doing podcasts, because it is just conversation. And okay, the same applies. The conversation is out there. But it's also a lot more fluid, and it's long form, so it's people understand that it's susceptible to change. Where you do this 10-minute care guide on how to care for Aki monitors, I don't. I've sort of, not that I ever had a love for it anyway, but I've just sort of fallen out of love with it. So I don't even know how many more YouTube videos. I'm not going to stop, but I don't even know how many more I will or won't make. I'll just do, when something happens, I'm going to film it. Until then, I probably won't have a video, just because it's like, like you say, it's 100 hours to put into a 10-minute video that I could just spend with my animals. So for me, the time into the video isn't worth it. But my platform is Instagram, so I'm kind of leaning into that, because the message can be done over Instagram, and it takes less of my time than doing a YouTube video. But
yeah, that's, and also another point is it came into my mind when Thomas asked me about pictures for the article, and I was like, oh, I rarely do any pictures, because how is the animal feeling if it's pointed 24/7 a camera in his face? The interaction point is not you, it's the camera.
Yeah, it's the eye.
Yeah,
it's the predator. Yeah,
exactly. That thinking process. I had to sort out my drives to find any pictures, since sometimes I do for size comparison, or I had to sort out a video, not a video, a picture of a successful mating from 2016. Since I don't have anyone, I don't want to disturb my animals. That's another point. The animals, the interaction point of the most big YouTuber animals is a camera. Yeah, they might hop on you, but it's the camera.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I always am. My little green tree monitor, my female, she's a very acrobatic animal. She'll jump straight out for food, and she does. But if you try and get like a macro shot, and have the tongs here and the macro shot, and she's completely captive bred, she's and I wouldn't go as far to call it stress. Well, it definitely is stress. Stress is the wrong words, but it's not fear, but it is, what the fuck are you, and what the fuck do you want? And when then you zoom that in a bit more to all of a sudden the wild caught stuff that I have that still aren't accustomed to me yet, because I don't rush the process, and sometimes the 10-second video for Instagram, just not fucking worth it. Just not worth it. But again, I'm not going to sit here and try front. I am guilty for it, of course I am. That's what I do. But I do see it sometimes, and that's why normally when I do stuff, I ask Fee to film from a bit of a distance, so then the animal's focused on me, and she's kind of there filming on the side, and I can do the interaction with the animal, get it keyed into the food, so it's like food, and then kind of do it. But yeah, you're not wrong. You really aren't wrong, because I've seen that. The Akis, they're just like all over it, like but when you start getting into the more intelligent species, or the species that are more instinctual, then they're like, what? And I have species that the second they see me, they run. But if they see the phone, they freeze. And they only freeze because they know they're being watched, because they perceive it as an eye. And it's like, I can't move because if I move, that you know I'm here. And it's understanding that, oh, wow, it's staying still for me. I can feel. No. You've caught it out. It knows.
Yeah.
And it is, you're right. It's thinking that kind of levels. And it's, where do we, I was talking to a while ago now, but Stefan from Terrarium channel. And he was basically saying there's obviously a line, but to a level, to a point, the stress could necessarily be worth it to promote a message. But then after that, it's pointless. Why are we doing it? You know, same as animal education and outreach. If you take your snake out once a month to educate people, cool. If you're taking it out every single day to educate people, where's the line?
Yeah.
So there's always levels to it, and it's a very good point from people that have obviously thought deeper, from a deeper level, from an animal level, from a primitive level, you know, and it shows. So yeah, I'll agree with that 100%, and it's something that I have been conscious of, but I don't know for me. Obviously, for the animals, I know the answer, but I don't know for me what's right, because, like you say, do you just go, yeah, fuck it, I'm not doing it anymore, or do you just do it when you can, as you can, with animals that seem to be more tolerant?
And that's another point. Some animals need a little bit longer to die than others, and there's a good line in the first Jurassic World movie. Okay, you feed it with that crane, that's the whole interaction point, and then you expect if you go into the cage, it recognizes you.
Yeah,
Same thinking. And if you put the animal always out, the outside, that's the acclimation point. And you put a camera straight into the face. Most reptile enclosures are so bright if you've done it right. Besides that, you have a defilter on it, so it sees the reflection, color tinted. And you have a more intelligent reptile species, it might be a recognition of another competitor who darkens itself to make it look more threatening.
yeah,
Chameleons make themselves darker, bulk up. That's another stress factor. So if I film my animals, I have to film through glass. Okay, glass is reflective.
yeah,
Since I don't want to put a camera right before the glass, so I counteract the reflective, and I use a 105mm objective. It's not super clear, and I can't do any macro shots, but I can zoom in a little bit, and that's enough.
yeah.
And with 4K filming, if you crop it to HD, full HD, you can still zoom 400% in. So
Yeah, there does have to be a balance.
yeah.
I try not to bother any of my animals. Like, I get a lot of flack for being anti-handling. And I'm not anti-handling at all. I'm anti going in and picking a lizard up and putting it on your shoulder.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, there's videos of me handling lizards, but they come out to me, whether that be enticed through food or whether that just be through curiosity. But outside of health checks or needs be, I don't touch them. So everyone's like, "Oh yeah, you don't want to hold your animal," and I mean, it's a conversation for a different day, because it's going to be a wormhole. But this whole talk of wild, people are like, "I want this wild. I want this. I want to keep naturalistically. I want to keep wild." Okay, but then you handle it. I want to keep naturalistically. I want to keep wild. Okay, but you only feed it once a week a rat and no other food. Okay,
Yeah.
I want to keep wild, but you have a deep heat projector and one UVB. Okay, I want to keep wild. You have no airflow in the enclosure. Where are we drawing the line? And again, I personally, I don't care. It's these people throwing the argument, and you're like, okay, well, if we turn it back, you're not keeping wild. No one is. We can do our best, of course we can, but I think it's having the ability to understand that nobody is perfect. So stop throwing your energy that can just be reflected straight back, you know?
Yeah, and that's where the circle draws into get a fish tank. You can
Yeah.
pet your fish. If you knock on the glass, they might die on stress. You have to get the enclosure right. You can make a more bioactive environment. That it's fascinating how people come to such stupid ideas just because the animal lets you do it since you are the predator.
It doesn't have a choice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's forced into that situation. And first time, it's cool, I get maybe clicks for it. Or in another reptile group, I see a lot of females putting their bearded dragons and leopard geckos right on their chest since they get clicks for it. Or on
I've
their
said this
bellies.
so many
Or
times.
cuddling. Yeah.
If I
Or
had long blonde hair
yeah.
and a bigger chest, I would have millions of followers.
An old model making YouTube friend of mine said, if you want clicks, you have to be a pretty girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was fascinating. There is a reason for it, since male are more attracted to that than for education. It's biological, but there was a girl who started model making a year after me. 300K in the first week. Subscribers. And I
Yeah.
was there sitting hundreds of hours making cinematic videos, going to a film school, learning After Effects and what else.
Yeah.
It's like, but to come to think of that, okay, that girl is doing it with her bearded dragon, so others will follow since they get attraction.
Mm.
And then we have the guys feeding their snakes. Whoa, 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 whoa. Yeah. We know the videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
It's the same. You stage an unnatural situation that's not in favor of the animal you are responsible of. We have to get rid of that.
Yeah. I sometimes feel sorry for the good female, let's call them content creators, because I feel like
there
they
are
get
some of
tarred.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, they get tarred with a bad brush because there are some that flaunt what they've got.
Yeah.
And they're in a place of privilege because they were born with privilege.
Life is RNG.
Yeah, as men, you have to be a top 1 percentile to be in that level. And again, if I could be the most handsome man in the world, but being the most handsome man in the world with a lizard on my chest isn't going to attract the opposite sex because it's a minority, it's not a majority. So yeah, I do feel sorry for the girls that have their heart in the right place, because I see it. I don't really follow many female creators, to be honest, because every other picture is a crop top or a vest top and a lizard or a snake, and it's just not stuff that I wish to consume. But I joke with friends about it. I'm like, hey, I just need to get girls on the podcast and I'll get millions of followers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But no, the whole concept, full stop, of animal exploitation, it's a hard one, because even if your heart's in the right place, you're still not always doing the best for the animal, even if you mean to be. And I think as long as you're aware of that, I think self-awareness is a trait we all need, but sometimes it will drive you to an early grave. But as long as you're aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it, doesn't necessarily make it okay, but at least that you're conscious. And if you're conscious, then you can hopefully pull a plug when you need to.
Yeah, it's the same. I provide in the summer months. I provide my animals. I put them in boxes outside. Alone, the transfer from the enclosure to outside is a huge stress. Even if my intentions are good, and the best light is always natural sunlight, natural since I'm in Germany.
Yeah.
But alone, the transfer and the new environment, and it changes every time since I have to move the box and stuff like that. It's good for the animal per se, but in the first moments, I don't know if I harm my animal a little bit more, or if it's better than that I make my front doors a little bit more open, put half glasses in it so there's more airflow, and just put 2 or 3 more metal halides in it. There is still, I'm unsure if I should keep my best practice since I do it for 10 plus years, or if I should change it. And those situations are not bad, because you always think, is that situations I put my animal in, is this really the best? Can I improve?
I think stresses, to a degree, are okay. For example, there are positive stresses.
Yeah.
You taking it out is obviously a negative stress because it's predation event to the animal, because it's regardless of how you, like, when I put Luminize in my tree monitor enclosure, I got a piece of cork bark, got some food, got him onto the cork bark, put the cork bark into another Viv, because even though he's happy to come into my arm, getting him to go. So, and the second I put him in the other Viv, he finished the food and he was like, shit, I'm not in my enclosure. So he's like freaking out. And then because I had a cork tube in there, he hid in the cork tube. And then when I put him back into his enclosure, he sprinted out because he was like, shit, you know, and there's no escaping that. That was a stress. So in that instance, I think the short-term stress of that for the long-term gain of the natural UVB or upgrading the enclosure is okay. Like you know, you can't get around that. But then also, like, stresses, like, it's not even a stress, but having that stimulus of something changing in the enclosure or making the food harder to get or adding something new that they don't know how to interact with it is a stress, but sometimes can be a positive stress. But I understand what you're saying with the whole moving, and because it could be perceived as a predation event. But I think, like I say, I think long term, the benefits outweigh the cons. I don't think you can't wrap them in bubble wrap, because then when you do inevitably stress them, it could be a lot more detrimental long term than having small spikes of stress now and then, in my opinion, anyway. Because at the end of the day, they're kept in captivity, so they have to be, to a degree, resilient. I'm not saying go in there and chase them around with sticks and fucking pretend there's birds in there and shit, but there has to be a degree of resilience built up, because otherwise, what's the point in being in captivity if they're constantly stressed every time they see the captor? So that it's such a fine line, because
that's
my
the
indicus,
problem.
my indicus, my wild indicus, they've been with me. Next week would be with me for a year. All 3 of them are still petrified of me. I'm cool with that. They'll live hopefully 20 years. And if it takes 2 to 3 years to get them to a point of trusting me, that's fine. It's a blip in their life. But they are in captivity. So they do have to learn that I am not a predator. And I don't intend to rush that process. Some people throw them in an empty box and break their spirit like a wild horse. I'm not into that. But also, I do feel guilty every time I see them and they see me and then they run off. So I also try to reduce my time in the reptile room. But by reducing my time in the reptile room, I'm reducing the stress, which is reducing the resilience, which is elongating the time of becoming a captive. But then also at the same time, with my instance, they will reach adulthood. They'll be more cocksure because they're bigger. They're no longer prey. Then I can start to go, okay, let's work on our relationship because you're no longer scared of me. You're more likely to attack me. So the power dynamic changes as they get older.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously with horn lizards, they're a prey item, full stop.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's such a fine line. And I don't think there is an answer outside of what you and you perceive your animals to be comfortable with, because I can't tell you what to do for your animals because you know your animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard one.
And even with animals that have such good eyesight, horned lizards, the Texas ones, they have a range of around 2 meters they can straight. And from my model building days, I had my mother-in-law got me a huge wooden dragon. It was really huge, and I had it still hanging on the corner, and when I opened the window, it throws a shadow, and I lost it with one of my females. She's afraid of me since then. Every time I go around enclosure, she ducks. I can't interact with her. I have to stay around 3 meters away until she comes out. Then I can offer food. That's a build-up of trauma, and you can't get it maybe in a couple of years. But if the trauma is initiated in the most weakened state of the animal, it will never rehabilitate from that.
Yeah.
And with wild caught, it needs a lot of attention and a lot of patience to get them right on track.
You can't rush it.
No, of course not. And most people getting wild caught back in the days were after a quick buck. Okay, I get the animals, I breed them, I'm the first to breed them in captivity. Yeah, the most of them just imported gravid females. That's not a factor of success. I consider success with animals if you raise the animal, besides wild caught or captive bred, they reproduce and the offspring reproduces. Then you have 2 full cycles. Then you most likely know your stuff. Besides, it's a bearded dragon. They reproduce in a shoebox. That's not a guarantee for success.
You can't deem success if one day you get eggs and you go, oh shit, I've got eggs. I didn't know this was happening. That's not.
Yeah.
Like it's your keeping obviously is dialed in, but that's luck. If you're not, the first time it happens, you're not expected to know it happens. But if you haven't read the signs that you understand the second time it happens, and you've not learned, you've not understood what these animals are doing, you're not reading the patterns, you're just, without even knowing it, you're keeping them right. And if you just, oh Jesus, I have eggs, I didn't realize you were gravid, you haven't understood. I don't. There is a level of success to there, but you haven't broken past the next barrier. You haven't achieved. If you can't pinpoint when your animal is hitting a set event, getting ready for brumation, getting ready to breed, just about to lay eggs, then there's more work to be done there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. If you're not interacting with the animal, maybe a compromise is spending more time outside the enclosure to get the animal used to your presence in the first place. It is hard because some animals are interactive. The problem with this whole stress point is even in species, every individual is different. So you could have 20 horn lizards, one of which could be the most Jack the lad, cocky, come out like whereas the other 19 could be incredibly shy, or vice versa. And it could be the same with Akis. You could have an Aki that's absolutely petrified of people. You can have one like mine are literally, you open the door and they're like, what's going on? And they run over, And then the difference between Ackies and horn lizards is night and day because of the ecology. It's such a hard question, but I do think regardless of the species, you can't let them suffer because you're trying to reduce a minimal amount of stress. And when I say suffer, you know they're going to benefit from being outside. So by not putting them outside to a degree, they suffer because they would benefit otherwise. So as much as they're not suffering in captivity, if you can benefit them by putting them outside, by not putting them outside, they're then suffering through the loss of not being put outside, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what you have to decide in your personal instance is allowing them to suffer by not putting them outside and not giving them that benefit worth not stressing them out to put them outside. So what would I rather give? The small stress to the benefit, or not stress them at all, but not give them the benefit? And it is the lesser of two evils. Like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. There is no win, but there is also no loss, because one way or the other, the animal suffers by not being given the natural UVB or being stressed out. There is a loss, but then there's also a pro. Okay, I'm not stressing them out. Okay, they get the natural UVB. So you have to decide which one, with every instance and every situation, which one's more important.
Yeah.
Which no one knows the answer to, and no one will get it right. You just have to kind of guess and weigh up what, over time with experience, what is better. Yeah, hard. When you start going deep in this stuff.
Thoughts. Yeah. A lot of deep stuff.
But on this deep stuff, we are going to start wrapping up purely just because my cold is killing my throat. But I would love to have you back on for a round 2.
Oh yeah,
because I've really enjoyed this conversation and the deep nuance of the reptile keeping brain. But I'll be completely honest, I'm falling apart. Like my throat and head is like, I was tempted to message and be like, oh, I'm not feeling it, but I was like, I want to do the podcast. I'm not. So we've nearly got 3 hours up, but I'm happy with it. But before we do start wrapping up, is there anything you want to touch on, or is there anything we haven't touched on, or if there's anything you want to ask me, like anything that we haven't brought up or anything like that? You can say no. The answer can be no. I feel like we've covered quite a good amount, to be fair.
There is no to that answer, but we should wrap it up, and maybe we will take on another almost 3 hours.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah,
There's
I'm down.
So much more.
Yeah, we'll sort one out for the new year.
So much
definitely.
fun. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to. But I've really enjoyed it, and you can definitely tell that you're incredibly passionate for the species and you know your shit. So hats off to you for being patient and learning and sticking with it, because as someone who's tried to dial in species, it's bloody hard work. So hats off to you for actually putting the time, energy, money, effort, and giving these lizards what they need and giving them a voice. So that in itself is a massive credibility to you. Hats off. Fair, and you clearly know your stuff, so your work speaks for itself.
Always try to be better.
That's it. It's a good motto to live by. That could be, hold on to that for a second, because we have 2 wrap-up questions.
Okay.
So the first wrap-up question, it always changes, but the first wrap-up question is, do you have got kids? Have you got children?
No, not yet.
Okay. So that's fine, because the question is normally either what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given, or what advice would you like to instill on your kids? What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Never accept you. Yeah, never accept the words, you can't do that. That's how it started with horned lizard. You can't keep them. They need acid. You can't keep them. They are a king species. Never accept that. Do your research, build your own mind, and try it. And if it doesn't work on the first try it again.
Yeah. Sound advice. I agree. You'd be surprised what you can achieve when you put your mind to it.
Yeah.
It's just a case of having patience. And once you achieve patience, then things don't seem so bad. And
Absolutely.
then the last question, Oh, actually, that was the last question. I'm messing up. But the first question, what piece of advice would you give to a new reptile keeper? But I guess that kind of is it as well.
The same. Make your research. Don't believe one source. I would advise look at the evolution of the animal. Where does it live? Look at scientific papers. If you go on YouTube, don't look for care guides. Look for documentaries herping around. I love to go to a YouTube channel that shows me the Sonoran Desert. That shows me the plants, that shows me not exactly that animal that I keep, but other animals that live there. That shows me the soil, the seasons. Look at temperature gradients. Do first the baseline, then build the enclosure, then get the animal. And the rest is empiric.
100%. If you get an understanding of the animal that you're going to get before you get it,
yeah,
you don't even realize how much of an advantage you're going to have when you start keeping them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you don't keep the animal, you keep the whole environment, the whole evolution line.
Yeah, it's involved. It evolved to live in its niche, and if you can give it the niche it's evolved in, life's going to become so much easier.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how it is.
There we go. Right, Benjamin, thank you very much. I'm sorry to cut it a little bit short. Just like I say,
no problem.
am slowly dying of death. Thank you all. Benjamin's link. I don't know if you've got more links, but your Instagram is below.
Instagram is the most important.
Yeah, Instagram is below. Please go and check them out. Yeah, if you want to just have a little promo of yourself, your Instagram is below, but where people can find you and check out.
Yeah, you can find me mostly on Instagram. That's where I most interact, but you can also find me on Facebook. And yeah, I have a YouTube channel now, but it's just a Luminize video and the horned lizard of feeding ants.
It's a sick Luminize video. You should watch it. It's great.
If you have questions about horned lizards or you keep them and are not sure about them, please contact me. We can figure it out. Everyone deserves to be able to have success with those animals.
Yeah, they're a very, very cool species. I do. Maybe one day, not anytime soon, but maybe one day. They do intrigue me. They're a very, very cool. Oh, Jesus Christ! Bam's being German, so you're gonna have to help me. I know what this one is. Thank you.
Yeah. What I captured and what I gathered was a good conversation.
Okay.
Basically, that's it. I have to translate it all the time.
No, that's fine. Thanks, Tree, for making me look silly. But yeah, thank you all for tuning in and listening. Thank you for bearing with me whilst my throat is on fire. Thank you, Benjamin, for your time. I've really enjoyed it. And honestly, we'll go back in round 2, early New Year, January, February time. Get you back on.
Of course.
And we'll dive, well, or we could do springtime when your horned lizards are coming up. That could be quite a good one. Yeah. We'll aim for around there.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good idea to go from there. We can sort of touch in where you're at with things and how the season's going to get going and stuff.
And we can do it for the whole year. So we covered.
Yeah, we can touch in.
Oh, yeah, we can touch it every 3 months.
That would be cool. Yeah, I'm down for that. I am down for that. Life's too short to learn German. Do you know what? Just very quickly, I'm always very envious of anybody that can speak multiple languages because I know the odd word of a couple of languages, but obviously I'm not fluent in any. And here you are on a podcast. I'm assuming English isn't your mother tongue.
No, I'm Japanese.
Oh, wow. You fooled me.
No problem.
Your English is, flawless, impeccable.
It's good enough. It's good enough.
It's great. And I struggle to speak English. So when people can speak multiple languages, I'm always in awe of it. So fair play for that. But anyway, thank you everyone. Please check out Benjamin, the link below. I am going to love and leave you all now because I need to go and take some painkillers and some medicine. On that cheery note, everyone. Bye.
Bye.